Supreme Commander Vorex stood on the observation deck of the inevitable Dominion, his four arms clasped behind his back as he studied the blue-green planet on the main view screen. The marble-like world hung suspended against the black canvas of space, looking deceptively peaceful from this distance. Behind him, the command crew of Kra'Vek warriors worked in perfect synchronization, their scaled skin reflecting the soft ambient light of the bridge. "Magnify Sector 7, Vorex ordered, his voice a rumbling bass that seemed to vibrate the very air. The view screen shifted, zooming in on a sprawling metropolitan area. Primitive transportation vessels moved along designated pathways. Rectangular structures reached upward, though pathetically small compared to the magnificent spires of the Kra'Vek homeworld. "Pitiful," remarked Subcommander Zex, his facial tentacles twitching with amusement. "Their tallest structures barely reach a kilometer in height." Vorex's upper lip curled. "Their technological advancement barely qualifies them as a spacefaring species. They've only reached their own moon and sent primitive probes to neighboring planets." He turned to his chief science officer. "Trachis, report." Science Officer Trachis stepped forward, her slender frame dwarfed by the warrior caste members surrounding her. The data crystal in her forehead pulsed with blue light as she accessed the information gathered during their 3-month covert observation. "The species calls itself human, Supreme Commander. Carbon-based, oxygen-breathing bipeds with remarkably short lifespans averaging less than a century. Their civilization is fragmented into nation-states with no unified global government. Military capabilities are primitive. Projectile weapons, limited energy-based defenses. Nuclear capabilities exist but are surprisingly underdeveloped. Atmospheric craft? Space defenses?" Vorex asked, already dismissive. "Jet propulsion aircraft, rudimentary satellites, a small orbital habitat they call a space station. No energy shields, no faster-than-light technology, and certainly no gravity manipulation." Vorex let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a snort. The High Council was concerned about this? Their automated defense systems would struggle against our scout ships, let alone the Dominion fleet. "There is one curious finding," Trachis continued, her voice taking on a tone of scientific interest. "They appear extremely adaptable. Their planet contains diverse climates and ecosystems, and these humans have managed to establish habitation in nearly all of them, from sub-zero temperatures to extreme deserts. Many species adapt," Vorex dismissed. "The Horvani adapted to methane atmospheres, yet they fell to us in less than a solar cycle. Yes, Supreme Commander, but their physiological resilience tests surprisingly high. They can survive significant trauma that would kill many comparable species." Subcommander Zex approached the view screen, studying the bipedal creatures moving about their daily routines. "Look at them. Soft. No natural armor, no claws, blunt teeth. Their muscular density is a fraction of ours. Even their bone structure is fragile. I could crush their skulls with one hand." Vorex turned away from the display. "Prepare the first wave. We'll begin with a standard template conquest. Orbital strikes on their primary military installations and government centers, followed by dropship deployment at strategic coordinates." "Conventional or pacification protocol?" asked Zex. Vorex considered for a moment. "This world has resources we need, particularly their water reserves and rare earth minerals. The Council wants minimal ecological damage. Pacification first. We'll eliminate their leadership and military resistance, then offer terms to the survivors." "And if they refuse terms?" A cruel smile spread across Vorex's face, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Then conventional it is, but I doubt we'll need it. Species like this one typically surrender after the first demonstration of our power. Their survival instinct overrides their pride. Estimated resistance timeline: Zex inquired, already initializing the battle planning matrix on his command console. Based on comparable conquest metrics from similar technological civilizations, I anticipate total military collapse within 72 standard hours, with full planetary surrender within 120 hours. Vorex looked almost disappointed. The High Council allocated us a full planetary cycle for this operation. We'll be finished and mining resources before the second moon completes its orbit. Trachis hesitated, her data crystal flickering. Supreme Commander, if I may, there are some unusual cultural anomalies that might be relevant. Speak quickly, Science Officer. The battle planning is already underway. Their entertainment media stories, visual performances, games contain recurring themes of resistance against overwhelming odds. They seem to glorify the concept of fighting even when defeat seems certain. Trachis hesitated, her data crystal flickering. Supreme Commander, if I may, there are some unusual cultural anomalies that might be relevant. Speak quickly, Science Officer. The battle planning is already underway. Vorex and Zex exchanged amused glances. Of course, Supreme Commander. I merely thought it worth noting. Many species tell themselves comforting fantasies. Trachis, Vorex said condescendingly. It's common among those who have never faced a true predator species. Reality will quickly dispel such delusions. Captain Marcus Drake stared at the satellite images spread across the situation table, his brow furrowed in concentration. The darkened conference room in the Pentagon sub-basement level hummed with tense energy as the Joint Chiefs and key scientific advisors processed what they were seeing. Your thoroughness is noted, Science Officer. But cultural analysis is ultimately irrelevant in military operations. Prepare your research teams for deployment after pacification. The Council is particularly interested in their biological diversity. Yes, Supreme Commander. Dr. Eleanor Wright, NASA's Director of Exoplanetary Studies, pushed her glasses up on her nose. Our best estimate is 3 months. They're using some kind of cloaking technology, but there have been gravitational anomalies consistent with massive objects in lunar orbit. The only reason we spotted them at all was the solar flare last week that briefly illuminated their hull signatures. General Thompson, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, braced his hands on the table. Size estimate. They've been there for how long? Drake asked, his voice a controlled calm that belied the churning in his gut. Jesus Christ, someone muttered. The largest vessel is approximately 3.7 kilometers in length, Dr. Wright said, her voice steady despite the implications. There appear to be at least 7 smaller craft ranging from 500 meters to 1.2 kilometers. A heavy silence fell over the room. Dr. Abrams, the Defense Department's lead physicist, cleared his throat. Unknown, but we've detected energy signatures orders of magnitude beyond our most advanced systems. The radiation patterns suggest directed energy weapons that could, theoretically, deliver explosive yields equivalent to our largest nuclear devices, but with precision targeting capabilities. Drake studied the thermal imaging that showed the vague outlines of the alien vessels. His mind raced through tactical scenarios, each more hopeless than the last. 15 years in Special Forces and another 5 commanding Black Ops missions hadn't prepared him for this. Nobody was prepared for this. Weaponry assessment? Drake asked. And defensive capabilities? General Thompson asked. Again speculative, but the energy fields surrounding their vessels would likely render our current missile technology ineffective. Even nuclear strikes might be deflected or absorbed. Drake looked up from the images. Have they made any aggressive moves? General Thompson nodded grimly. The President has authorized DEFCON 2. All military personnel are being recalled from leave. NATO allies have been briefed, along with Russia and China. For once, everyone's on the same page. Whatever these things are, they're a threat to all of us. No? Dr. Wright answered. They appear to be in observation mode. Scanning our communications, mapping our infrastructure, classic intelligence gathering. So they're planning something, Drake said. It wasn't a question. Thompson exchanged glances with the other Joint Chiefs before responding. You're being reassigned, effective immediately. Project Prometheus has been activated. Drake straightened up, squaring his shoulders. What's my role in this, General? I'm just a field commander. Drake felt a chill run down his spine. Project Prometheus was a theoretical contingency plan developed for exactly this scenario. First contact with a technologically superior hostile force. Most military leaders considered it a thought exercise rather than a viable strategy. Project Prometheus is a last resort, Drake said carefully. And we may well be at our last resort before these things even fire a shot, Thompson replied. You've been selected to lead the ground component. Your experience with unconventional warfare and your background in engineering make you uniquely qualified. I'll need a team. Drake looked back at the satellite images, at the massive vessels hovering near the dark side of the moon, unseen by the billions of people going about their daily lives below, people who had no idea what was coming. How long until the public knows? You'll have your pick of personnel. The best we've got. Drake nodded, already mentally assembling his team. I want Sergeant Wade Patterson, Lieutenant Sophia Torres, and Dr. James Holden to start with. The President is addressing the nation at 2100 hours. After that, all hell breaks loose. Done, Thompson said without hesitation. Anything else? Drake's eyes remained fixed on the alien ships. We need to assume they can intercept our communications. From now on, everything about Prometheus goes old school. Hard copy only, rebel orders when possible. No digital footprint. Agreed. And one more thing, Drake added, his voice taking on a harder edge. I want every piece of intel we have on them, not just the technical data. I want to understand how they think, what they want, why they're here. Dr. Wright's team is working on cultural and behavioral analysis based on their observation patterns, Thompson said. But we're flying blind here, Drake. We have no historical context for this. Then we make educated guesses, Drake replied. Every predator has weaknesses. Every invader makes mistakes. Our job is to find them and exploit them. General Thompson nodded grimly. Report to Cheyenne Mountain at 0600 tomorrow. The facility has been designated as Prometheus Command. As the meeting adjourned, Drake remained behind, studying the images of the alien vessels. In his mind, he was already at war, calculating angles of attack, identifying vulnerabilities, formulating strategies. It was what he'd been trained to do, what he excelled at, find the enemy's weakness and strike with overwhelming force. But this time, they were the ones overwhelmingly outmatched. Wade Patterson sat on the edge of his bunk, methodically cleaning his sidearm, a ritual that helped him think. The barracks were nearly empty. Most of the unit was in the mess hall, buzzing with rumors about the sudden recall and the president's upcoming address. At 34, Patterson was older than most of the other Special Forces operators, with a weathered face that told the story of too many missions in too many hellholes around the world. 4 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Syria, and numerous classified operations had left him with a collection of scars and a profound understanding of human conflict. His phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. Mountain air might do you good. 0600. Bring only essential gear. Drake. The captain had a way of finding the most cryptic methods of communication when something big was going down. Patterson deleted the message immediately. Cheyenne Mountain at 0600. Whatever was happening, it was serious enough to take them to one of the most secure facilities in the country. He finished reassembling his 6 Sauer, then reached for his personal tablet. Might as well check the news before everything went into lockdown. He scrolled through headlines, most speculating about the unusual military movements and emergency government meetings happening worldwide. One story caught his eye. Astronomical anomalies near lunar orbit spark scientific debate. The article quoted several astronomers discussing unexplained gravitational measurements and light refraction patterns near the moon over the past 3 months. Patterson wasn't a physicist, but he'd spent enough time around military intelligence to recognize when certain details were deliberately being kept vague. He switched to another news source which featured a shaky civilian video of what appeared to be unusual atmospheric phenomena, lights moving in formation at impossible speeds. "You seeing this shit?" Patterson looked up to see Lieutenant Sofia Torres standing in the doorway, tablet in hand, displaying the same news story he'd just been reading. "Yeah," he replied simply. "Something big is happening," she said quietly. "All leave canceled worldwide. Emergency sessions at the UN, and I just got a text from Drake." Torres entered and sat on the bunk opposite his. At 29, she was one of the youngest officers to qualify for Delta Force, with specializations in communications technology and electronic warfare. Her short black hair was regulation precise, her posture military perfect even in this informal setting. "Mountain climbing at dawn?" Patterson asked with a raised eyebrow. Patterson shook his head slowly. "Look at the pattern. This isn't about conventional threats. Everyone's cooperating. Us, Russia, China, even North Korea has gone radio silent after some high-level communications with Beijing." Torres nodded. "You too, huh? What do you think it is? Russia? China?" Torres' eyes widened slightly as understanding dawned. "You think..." Dr. James Holden was technically a civilian consultant, but he'd worked with their unit on several operations involving advanced technology. The man was a genius with electronics and material science, with a side interest in xenobiology that most people considered eccentric. "I think we should pack light and be ready for anything." Patterson cut her off, suddenly aware of potential listening devices. "And maybe catch the president's address tonight." Torres nodded. Message received. Holden got called in too. He was pulling research duty at MIT when his security detail showed up and whisked him away. "Until now, perhaps." "Good," Patterson said. "If anyone can make sense of whatever this is, it's Holden." Torres lowered her voice even further. "My cousin works at the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico. She said they detected some kind of signal 3 months ago, but everything went classified immediately. The entire facility was locked down for a week." As Torres left, Patterson turned off his tablet and lay back on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. Throughout his military career, he'd faced death many times, had seen the worst that humans could do to each other. He'd made peace with his mortality long ago. Patterson absorbed this information silently. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture he wasn't sure he wanted to see clearly. "We should get some rest," he finally said. "Something tells me sleep might be a luxury after tonight." But this was different. This was potentially humanity's mortality at stake. His thoughts were interrupted by a facility-wide announcement. "All personnel report to communal areas for the president's address." 5 minutes. With a deep breath, Patterson stood, squared his shoulders, and headed for the common room. Whatever was coming, he would face it as he had faced everything in his life, head-on with determination and grim resolve. Little did he know that across the vacuum of space, alien eyes were already marking targets, calculating destruction, and completely underestimating the species they were about to engage. Supreme Commander Vorex watched with satisfaction as the invasion fleet deployed from the inevitable Dominion's massive hangar bays. 300 assault vessels, each carrying a complement of 50 Kra'Vek warriors, streamed toward the blue-green planet below. The operation was proceeding exactly according to the standard conquest protocol, a demonstration of overwhelming force to break the primitive species' will before serious resistance could form. Their first and possibly final mistake. Excellent. Vorex's 4 arms remained clasped behind his back, his posture relaxed and confident. Begin with their aerospace defense systems, then proceed to command centers and heavy weapons depots. Standard pacification procedure. Initial targets acquired. Sub-Commander Zex announced from his station. Military installations in regions designated North America, Asia, and Europe marked for first-wave bombardment. The tactical display showed the first wave of vessels entering Earth's atmosphere, their advanced hulls easily withstanding the friction of entry. Red targeting markers highlighted human military bases across the planet's surface. Supreme Commander, I'm detecting unusual electromagnetic activity near their polar regions. Science Officer Trakas reported, her data crystal pulsing rapidly. Vorex waved a dismissive hand. Natural planetary phenomena. Focus on the mission parameters. The pattern seems artificial. Your concerns are noted, Science Officer. Vorex interrupted. But unnecessary. Our scans have thoroughly mapped their defensive capabilities. On the main view screen, the lead Kra'Vek vessels descended toward their first targets. Air Force bases in the region humans called North America. The assault ships deployed their primary weapons systems. Energy cannons charging with a distinctive purple glow visible even from orbit. First strike commencing in 3, 2, 1. A brilliant flash of light erupted from the surface, engulfing 2 of the lead Kra'Vek vessels. Vorex blinked in confusion. Report. 2 assault ships, destroyed, Supreme Commander. A tactical officer stammered, clearly struggling to comprehend the data on his console. Before anyone could answer, more flashes of light erupted across the planet's surface. The tactical display began flickering with alert symbols as Kra'Vek vessels disappeared from the sensor grid. Impossible, Vorex snarled, all 4 hands now gripping the command rail. What weapon did they deploy? High-energy particle beam weapons, Trakas said, her voice tight with professional concern. Terrestrial origin. They appear to be mounted on concealed platforms. Our sensors didn't detect them because they were inactive until our ships entered optimal firing range. Vorex's facial tentacles writhed with mounting rage. How many vessels lost? 27 confirmed destroyed. 43 sustaining critical damage. Zex reported, his earlier confidence replaced by growing alarm. Supreme Commander, these readings can't be correct. The energy output of their weapons exceeds anything our intelligence suggested they possessed. Magnify Sector 12, Vorex ordered, pointing to a region where multiple Kra'Vek ships were under attack. The view screen shifted to show a mountainous area where a concealed installation had opened to reveal a massive particle cannon. The human weapon pulsed with blinding blue-white energy, cutting through the hull of a Kra'Vek assault ship as if it were made of cloth rather than advanced composite alloys. The alien vessel shuddered, then exploded in a spectacular ball of fire. How? Vorex demanded, his voice now a dangerous growl. How did we miss this level of technology? Trakas analyzed the incoming data, her scientific detachment maintaining even as chaos erupted around her. It appears they concealed their advanced defensive systems. The technology signatures were masked by what seemed to be primitive power generation facilities. It was deliberate deception. On the display, hundreds more Kra'Vek vessels descended toward Earth, their formation tighter and more defensive than the first wave. They approached the locations of the human weapon emplacements, their own cannons charging for retaliatory strikes. Vorex slammed a fist onto the command console. Deploy second wave. Target those weapon emplacements specifically. Already executing, Supreme Commander, Zex replied. Second wave deploying with shield modifications to counter their energy signatures. They're changing formation, an officer called out. The human defenses are mobile. Adaptive deployment, Zex muttered. They anticipated our response. Vorex watched in disbelief as the ground-based defense platforms that had been firing on his ships suddenly retracted into the earth, only to emerge elsewhere, continuing their devastating assault from new positions. The second wave of Kra'Vek ships fired at the previous locations, their energy weapons scarring empty terrain. Tactical analysis, Vorex roared. Recalibrate immediately. The human weapons appeared to be a type of directed particle accelerator, Trakas explained. They're channeling massive energy through what seems to be an artificial element we haven't encountered before. The particles penetrate our shields because they're modulated at frequencies our defensive systems weren't calibrated to resist. Vorex turned to his communication officer. Order all ships to maintain distance and engage from maximum range. Deploy countermeasures and evasive patterns. In progress, but it requires time to analyze the specific frequencies. But the command came too late for many of the Kra'Vek vessels. The tactical display continued to light up with alert symbols as ship after ship fell to the human defenses. Captain Marcus Drake stood in the heart of Prometheus Command, deep within Cheyenne Mountain. The cavernous operations center hummed with focused intensity as military personnel and civilian scientists coordinated humanity's first major defensive action against an extraterrestrial threat. Massive displays showed the ongoing battle, tracking both the alien vessels and the deployment status of Earth's previously secret defensive network. But the command came too late for many of the Kra'Vek vessels. The tactical display continued to light up with alert symbols as ship after ship fell to the human defenses. Vorex turned to his communication officer. Order all ships to maintain distance and engage from maximum range. Deploy countermeasures and evasive patterns. Aegis array performing beyond expectations, Captain. Lieutenant Torres reported from her station, where she was coordinating the global defense grid. 74 confirmed kills, another 50+ with critical damage. Drake nodded, his expression grim but satisfied. Keep cycling the array positions. Don't let them get a fixed target. For 3 months, they'd known the aliens were watching. For 3 months, Project Prometheus had worked around the clock to deploy the planetary defense system that had been in development for nearly a decade. The Aegis arrays, advanced particle accelerators powered by the newly developed element Promethium, had been disguised as conventional infrastructure or hidden deep underground until the moment they were needed. Sergeant Patterson looked up from his tactical display. Lunar-based launchers are hot and ready. Satellite networks reconfigured for weapons deployment. Awaiting your command. They're adapting, Dr. Holden noted, studying the sensor readings of the alien vessels. The lanky scientist pushed his glasses up his nose, his fingers dancing across his console as he analyzed incoming data. Energy signature modifications detected in their shields. They're trying to counter the Promethium frequency. Then it's time for Phase 2, Drake said, turning to Patterson. Status on the orbital platforms. Patterson initiated the command sequence. Helios protocol activated. T-30 seconds to orbital deployment. Drake took a deep breath. This was the moment that would either save humanity or doom it. The ground-based Aegis arrays were only the first layer of defense, the one they'd allowed the aliens to detect. The orbital weapons platforms were the true surprise. Execute Phase 2, Drake ordered. 10 seconds, Patterson counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Helios weapons free. Aboard the inevitable Dominion, chaos had given way to battle focus as the Kra'Vek commanders adjusted to the unexpected resistance. Shield frequencies were being recalibrated, and new attack patterns were being implemented to counter the surprisingly effective human defenses. On the main display, a schematic showed the hidden weapon systems embedded in what the aliens believed were merely communication satellites and scientific instruments. For years, every space launch had carried components of this defense network, disguised as ordinary satellites or space station modules. Adaptation complete, Zex announced. Third wave deploying with modified shields. These primitives had one surprise, but they've played their only card. Vorex had regained his composure, though his facial tentacles still twitched with barely suppressed rage. Deploy squadrons in triad formation. Target their population centers next. Let's see how long they maintain resistance when their civilians are threatened. New energy signatures detected. A sensor officer suddenly called out, his voice rising in alarm. Orbital. Their satellites are... Location, Vorex demanded. The officer never finished his sentence. The view screen flashed blindingly as dozens of Kra'Vek vessels simply disappeared, vaporized by precision strikes from orbit. Impossible, Vorex roared. They have no orbital weapons capability. Science Officer Trachis frantically analyzed the incoming data. It appears their satellites contain concealed weapon systems. They're generating focused solar energy beams. The technology is unlike anything in our records. The main view screen showed what looked like ordinary communication satellites unfolding to reveal massive reflective arrays. These arrays captured solar radiation, amplified it through promethium focusing chambers, and redirected it as devastating energy beams that cut through the Kra'Vek ships' hulls regardless of their shields. Vorex watched in mounting horror as a third of his invasion fleet was systematically destroyed by weapons that, according to all their intelligence, shouldn't exist. The humans had not only concealed their true technological capabilities but had apparently been preparing for this very scenario for years. How did we miss this? Zex demanded, his earlier confidence shattered. They disguised the components. Trakas explained, professional admiration creeping into her voice despite the dire situation. Each satellite appeared to serve a mundane purpose, but together they form a weapons network. Our scans registered them as primitive communication technology because that's exactly what they wanted us to see. The remaining Kra'Vek vessels began pulling back, abandoning their attack formations to escape the deadly fire from Earth's orbital defenses. But the human weapons followed, the satellite arrays adjusting their positions to maintain firing solutions. Defensive maneuvers, he ordered. All ships, retreat to minimum safe distance from their orbital range. They're targeting our engines, Zex reported, horror evident in his voice. They're not trying to destroy us outright. They're immobilizing our ships for follow-up strikes. Sir, we're detecting new launches from the surface, a tactical officer reported. On the tactical display, crippled Kra'Vek vessels hung helpless in low Earth orbit, their propulsion systems destroyed by precision strikes from the Helios network. The ground-based Aegis arrays then finished them off with coordinated particle beam attacks from below. More weapons? Vorex asked, dread building in his chest. No, sir. Vessels. They're deploying spacecraft. The view screen shifted to show sleek, angular craft rising from concealed bases on Earth's surface. Unlike the clumsy rockets the Kra'Vek had observed during their surveillance, these vessels moved with the precision and speed of advanced military spacecraft. Trakas. Explanation, Vorex demanded. The human vessels accelerated at rates that rivaled Kra'Vek interceptors, their targeting systems locking onto the already damaged alien ships. From the lid human vessel, a communication was broadcast on all frequencies, deliberately using the Kra'Vek's own communication protocols. Antimatter propulsion? Zex echoed in disbelief. That's nearly on par with our own technology. The science officer's data crystal pulsed erratically as she processed the new information. It appears these are not conventional chemical rockets. They're utilizing antimatter propulsion. Minimal antimatter contained in promethium magnetic bottles. The technology is elegant, efficient, far beyond what our intelligence suggested they possessed. Vorex stared at the human commander's image on the screen, unable to comprehend how these supposedly primitive beings had not only anticipated their attack, but prepared so thoroughly for it. This is Captain Marcus Drake of Earth Defense Force Prometheus Squadron to Alien Invasion Fleet. You have engaged in unprovoked aggression against our planet. Your vessels are now targeted for destruction. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. They're launching projectiles, a tactical officer reported. But the readings are unusual. On the view screen, the human vessels fired what appeared to be conventional missiles. But as they approached their targets, the missiles suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds. Kinetic impactors with antimatter-assisted final stage acceleration, Trakas reported, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her concern for their tactical situation. The antimatter is contained within a promethium matrix that releases it only at the moment of impact. Brilliant design. Minimal antimatter required for maximum destructive effect. The tactical display showed Kra'Vek ships literally being punctured by the human weapons. The kinetic impactors traveled at such speeds that they passed through the alien vessel's hulls before the antimatter detonated inside, destroying the ships from within. Order all forces to retreat, Vorex commanded, his voice hollow with shock. Return to the Dominion immediately. Did you not see what just happened? Vorex snarled. They hid their true capabilities from us. Who knows what other weapons they have waiting? We need to reassess everything we thought we knew about these humans. Supreme Commander, we still have numerical superiority. Zex protested. We can overwhelm them with our remaining forces. The surviving Kra'Vek vessels broke off their attack, accelerating away from Earth as quickly as their engines would allow. Several were too damaged to make the escape and were quickly finished off by the pursuing human vessels. Full retreat, Vorex repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. All ships returned to the Dominion immediately. As if to punctuate his point, another wave of Kra'Vek ships disappeared from the tactical display, destroyed by the combined assault of Earth's ground, orbital, and now space-based defense systems. Inside the inevitable Dominion's command center, a heavy silence fell as the scale of the disaster became clear. Nearly two-thirds of the invasion fleet had been destroyed or disabled. Hundreds of Kra'Vek warriors, the elite of their military, were dead, and all at the hands of a species they had dismissed as barely worth their attention. How? Vorex finally asked, his voice quiet but intense. How did they hide this level of technology from us? We observed them for 3 months. Our scans showed primitive defenses, chemical rockets, basic energy generation. Science Officer Trakas stepped forward, her analytical mind already forming theories. I believe, Supreme Commander, that they detected our presence the moment we arrived. Perhaps earlier, from our deceleration radiation as we approached their system. Everything we observed was a facade, a carefully constructed deception to make us underestimate them. But the level of coordination required, Zex began. Suggests they've been preparing for extraterrestrial contact, possibly hostile contact for some time, Trakas finished. Their entertainment media, which I noted contained themes of resistance against superior forces, may not have been mere fantasy as we assumed. It may have been psychological preparation for their population. Vorex turned to stare at the image of Earth on the main view screen, seeing the planet with new eyes. Not as an easy conquest, but as the home of a dangerously cunning species. They knew we were watching, he said slowly. They fed us exactly what they wanted us to see, and we fell for it completely. Supreme Commander, the returning vessels report that the humans are not pursuing beyond their orbital defense perimeter. A communications officer reported. They appear to be focusing on securing their immediate space rather than counterattacking. Tactical restraint, Vorex observed. They could have pursued and destroyed more of our forces, but they chose to secure their defensive position first. Discipline. Vorex was silent for a long moment, his forearms slowly tensing and relaxing as he considered their options. Finally, he turned to face his command staff. What are your orders, Supreme Commander? Zex asked. Contact the High Council. Inform them that the situation is more complex than anticipated. Request reinforcements from the main fleet. We will need at least 3 Dominion-class vessels and their support ships for the next phase. And, until then, Trakas inquired. He turned back to the view screen, watching as the surviving Kra'Vek vessels limped back to the safety of the inevitable Dominion. His facial tentacles twitched with a mixture of rage and, though he would never admit it, a new emotion, respect. We observe, Vorex said grimly. But this time we do so with the understanding that we are not watching primitives. We are watching a worthy adversary who has already proven more dangerous than any species we've encountered in the last 50 cycles. In Prometheus Command, the celebration was restrained. Yes, they had won the first battle, but everyone in that room knew this was only the beginning. They surprised us once, he said quietly. They will not do so again. Captain Drake studied the tactical display showing the retreating alien fleet. They'll be back, he said, and they'll be ready for the Aegis and Helios systems next time. Dr. Holden nodded, pushing his glasses up again. The Prometheum applications we've deployed so far represent only a fraction of the element's potential. The quantum phase shields and gravitational manipulation systems are nearly ready for deployment. And the Lazarus Protocol? Drake asked. Then it's a good thing we have more surprises waiting for them. Patterson replied with a grim smile. On the main screen, The massive alien command ship retreated to a position behind the moon, temporarily out of reach of Earth defense systems. But Drake wasn't worried. The alien invaders had learned a costly lesson today, one that species throughout the galaxy would soon come to understand. Lieutenant Torres looked up from her station. All key military personnel have received the nanite injections. Civilian distribution is at 37% globally and accelerating. Drake nodded, satisfaction mixing with determination on his face. Good. When they come back, they'll learn that our weapons aren't the only thing they underestimated. The war room inside Cheyenne Mountain fell silent as the holographic display updated with new intelligence. Captain Marcus Drake stared at the three-dimensional representation of what awaited them in orbit around Mars, his face illuminated by the ominous red glow of the projection. Humans were far from weak, and that was their enemy's biggest mistake. 3 weeks of relative calm, he muttered. Now we know why. Counting at least 3,000 combat vessels, Lieutenant Torres reported, her fingers dancing across her console. The new command ships are designated Alpha, Beta, and Gamma for tracking purposes. Each appears to be approximately 15% larger than the original. The display showed the inevitable Dominion, surrounded by 3 additional vessels of similar size, along with hundreds of smaller craft. The Kra'Vek reinforcements had arrived, transforming their defeated advance force into an armada. Dr. Holden adjusted his glasses, analyzing the energy signatures. They've modified their shields. The frequency modulations we're detecting suggest they've specifically adapted to counter both the Aegis arrays and the Helios network. Transport vessels, Torres suggested. Of course they have, Drake said. We knew they would. The question is, what else have they brought to the party?
Patterson zoomed in on a cluster of unusual vessels holding position behind the larger ships.
These don't match any of the previous combat profiles. Roughly cylindrical, minimal weapon signatures, heavy shielding. Drake shook his head. They wouldn't need that kind of shielding for transports. Those are something else. General Thompson entered the command center, followed by representatives from each branch of the military and several key allies. The general's face was grim as he took his position at the head of the strategic table. Ladies and gentlemen, he began without preamble. All civilian evacuations to hardened shelters are at 83% completion globally. We expect to reach 90% within the next 12 hours. That's the good news. He paused, his weathered face tightening. The bad news is, our deep space monitoring stations around Jupiter have detected another wave of deceleration signatures. More reinforcements are coming. How many? Drake asked. A murmur ran through the assembled commanders. At least twice what we're seeing now, Thompson replied. ETA approximately 7 days. Nanite distribution has reached 76% of military personnel globally and 62% of civilians, Dr. Holden reported. Production continues at maximum capacity, but complete coverage will require another 2 weeks minimum. The implications hung heavy in the air. Earth had surprised the Kra'Vek once, but the aliens were quick learners. They weren't taking any chances this time. What about the Lazarus Protocol? Asked the Chinese general. Wu, who had joined the command staff 2 weeks earlier as part of the Unified Earth Defense Initiative. Drake turned to face the assembled leadership. We can't wait 2 weeks. Those ships will be here in less than 24 hours. Agreed, Thompson said. Captain Drake, present your assessment and recommendation. Drake stepped forward, taking control of the holographic display. The Kra'Vek have adapted to our revealed capabilities. They'll have countermeasures for the Aegis and Helios systems, and they've brought overwhelming numbers. We need to deploy our secondary defensive systems now. The gravitational disruptors are ready, Dr. Holden added. Lab testing shows 97% effectiveness against simulated Kra'Vek hull configurations. The quantum phase shields aren't fully tested, objected Admiral Kensington, representing naval forces. Neither was anything else we've used so far, Drake countered. Every weapon and defense system in our arsenal was theoretical until 3 weeks ago when we actually had to use them. Then let's get to work, Thompson said. We have less than a day to prepare for the largest battle in human history. General Thompson turned to the president's military advisor, who had been silently observing from the edge of the room. We need authorization to deploy the QPS grid and the G-disruptors. The advisor nodded once. Granted. The president has given you full tactical authority, General. Whatever you need. Supreme Commander Vorex stood before the assembled War Council aboard the Inevitable Dominion. Around him, the commanders of the 3 additional Dominion-class warships, the Irresistible Conquest, the Inescapable Subjugation, and the Inexorable Domination, listened as he outlined the attack plan. We will not underestimate these humans again, Vorex stated, his voice carrying the weight of hard-learned lessons. Our initial engagement revealed they possess technology far beyond what our intelligence suggested. Their particle beam weapons, antimatter propulsion, and orbital defense networks caught us unprepared. That will not happen twice. Fleet Commander Drex, leader of the Irresistible Conquest and technically Vorex's superior, leaned forward. The High Council is most displeased with the initial failure. Vorex, they have sent me to ensure this conquest proceeds as planned. Which you failed to recognize, Drex noted coldly. Vorex's facial tentacles twitched with suppressed anger. I accept responsibility for the failure, but I have also learned from it. The attack plan I've devised accounts for both the known human defenses and potential hidden capabilities. With respect, Fleet Commander. Vorex replied, maintaining careful control of his tone. The humans employed deliberate deception. They detected our presence and fed us false intelligence. Science Officer Tracus stepped forward. We have analyzed the human weapons in detail. Their technology centers around an artificial element they call promethium. It possesses unusual quantum properties that allow for efficient energy manipulation, antimatter containment, and particle acceleration. Our shields have been reconfigured to counter these properties specifically. And what of these stealth capabilities? Asked Commander Kra'Vek of the Inexorable Domination. If they concealed their true technology once, they may have more surprises waiting. Indeed, Vorex acknowledged. Which is why our approach will be fundamentally different this time. Instead of a direct assault on their military capabilities, we will target their greatest weakness. He manipulated the tactical display to highlight population centers across Earth. They're civilians. Murmurs of approval rippled through the gathered commanders. The pacification spheres are prepared? Drex inquired. Vorex nodded. 100 spheres, each capable of subjugating a major population center. Once deployed, they will neutralize all electronic technology within their radius and release the control spores. Any human within range will be rendered completely docile and obedient. Murmurs of approval rippled through the gathered commanders. The pacification spheres are prepared? Drex inquired. And if they have countermeasures for the spheres? Kra'Vek asked. The spheres are merely the first phase, Vorex explained. While the humans are responding to them, our main fleet will execute the true attack. We've identified their primary command center here. The display zoomed in on Cheyenne Mountain. All their defensive operations appear to be coordinated from this facility. We will deploy the Annihilator. Even among the hardened Kra'Vek commanders, this announcement caused a stir. The Annihilator was a planet-killer weapon, rarely used even by the aggressive Kra'Vek. The High Council authorized this? Commander Zex of the Inescapable Subjugation asked. They authorized whatever means necessary to secure this world. Drex replied. The humans have proven themselves dangerous. We cannot risk allowing their technology to develop further. Vorex continued. The Annihilator will penetrate their mountain fortress and destroy their command structure. Without centralized coordination, their defensive networks will be significantly less effective. We can then proceed with conventional conquest methodologies. We will deploy overwhelming numbers, Vorex said simply. For every human vessel, we will commit 30 of our own. Their technology may be surprisingly advanced, but they cannot overcome such numerical superiority. And the human spacecraft? Kra'Vek inquired. Their antimatter-propelled vessels matched our interceptors for speed and maneuverability. Fleet Commander Drex rose, signaling the end of the discussion. The plan is approved. We commence the attack in 12 cycles. Let the conquest of Earth finally proceed as it should have from the beginning. Merely observations, Supreme Commander, she replied carefully. The humans demonstrated remarkable adaptability and deception in our first encounter. Logic suggests they may have anticipated our return with greater forces. You have concerns, Science Officer? He asked without turning. As the commanders dispersed, Vorex remained at the tactical display, studying the blue-green planet that had so unexpectedly resisted the might of the Kra'Vek Empire. He sensed Trakus approaching from behind. Of course they have, Vorex acknowledged. But even knowing we are coming, they cannot possibly counter all that we bring against them now. The pacification spheres alone would subjugate most species. Vorex turned to face her, his expression grim. And we have the Annihilator. And if that fails, we have the main fleet arriving in 7 cycles. The humans fought well in the first battle, but this war was lost before it began. And if they fail... The alarm klaxons blared throughout Prometheus Command as the Kra'Vek fleet entered Earth orbit. Drake sprinted into the command center, quickly assessing the tactical displays that showed hundreds of alien vessels spreading out to encircle the planet. They're not engaging our defense grid, Torres reported, confusion evident in her voice. They're holding position just beyond effective range of both the Aegis arrays and the Helios network. They're planning something, Drake muttered. Status on the QPS grid? Drake's eyes narrowed as he studied the trajectory of the mysterious objects. Intercept with Prometheus squadrons. Sir, we're detecting unusual energy signatures, a sensor officer called out. 100 objects separating from the main fleet. They're accelerating toward major population centers globally. Quantum phase shields at 82% coverage globally, Patterson replied. G-disruptors deployed and standing by. Launching now, Patterson confirmed. On the main display, Earth's defense forces mobilized. Sleek antimatter-propelled interceptors rose from hidden bases to challenge the incoming alien devices. Visual confirmation, Torres announced, bringing up a magnified image of one of the objects. Roughly spherical, perhaps 50 meters in diameter, the devices emitted a pulsing purple glow as they descended toward Earth's atmosphere. Analysis? Drake demanded. I don't like this, Drake said. General, recommend immediate activation of the QPS grid. Dr. Holden shook his head. Unknown technology. Energy signature doesn't match any weapons systems we observed in the previous engagement. They appear to be designed for atmospheric deployment rather than orbital strikes. Throughout the command center, officers relayed the order. Across the planet, thousands of quantum phase shield generators activated simultaneously, creating an overlapping network of semi-transparent energy fields that enclosed major population centers and military installations. General Thompson nodded. Authorized, bring the shields online. The spherical alien devices continued their descent, now pursued by human interceptors. Prometheus Squadron engaging targets, Patterson reported. On the tactical display, the human vessels opened fire on the mysterious alien spheres. Several direct hits were scored, but the spheres appeared unaffected. No damage, Torres confirmed. Their shielding is unlike anything we've encountered before. Drake thought quickly, analyzing the unfolding situation. The aliens were clearly executing a coordinated strategy. But what was the true objective? These spheres were obviously important, but they might also be a diversion. Orders, Captain? Patterson asked. Maintain intercept course but hold additional fire, he decided. Let's see what these things do when they reach the QPS grid. The command center watched tensely as the first sphere entered Earth's atmosphere, descending toward New York City. As it approached the shimmering barrier of the quantum phase shield, something unexpected happened. The sphere pulsed brightly. then passed through the shield as if it weren't there. "That's impossible," Dr. Holden exclaimed. "The QPS operates on a quantum level. Nothing should be able to penetrate it without matching phase harmonics." "They're adapting faster than we anticipated," Drake realized. "Torres, analyze that sphere's energy signature. Find me a way to stop it." On the main screen, they watched as the device came to a hovering stop, approximately 300 meters above Times Square. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the sphere pulsed once, twice, and emitted an expanding wave of energy that swept through the surrounding city blocks. "The first sphere is approaching ground level in New York," Patterson reported. As Torres worked frantically, similar reports came in from around the globe. The alien spheres were bypassing Earth's newest defense system with apparent ease, continuing their descent toward major cities. EMP effect detected. A technician called out, "All electronic systems within a 2-kilometer radius are offline." Drake's blood ran cold. "Biological weapon?" "Civilian communications from the affected area have ceased," Torres added, "and we're detecting some kind of biological agent being released from the sphere." Dr. Holden was already analyzing the data streaming in from sensors outside the affected zone. "Not exactly. It appears to be some form of neurological control agent. Microscopic spores or particles designed to affect the human nervous system." "The Lazarus Protocol," Drake said suddenly. "Will the nanites protect against this?" "Theoretically, yes," Holden replied. "The nanites should intercept any foreign agents before they can reach the brain. But only 62% of civilians have received the treatment." As the command center scrambled to execute the new orders, a more alarming development appeared on the tactical display. A massive vessel had detached from the main Kra'Vek fleet and was accelerating directly toward their position. Drake turned to General Thompson. "Sir, we need to focus our defense on unprotected population centers. The nanites are our only effective countermeasure against whatever these spheres are deploying." Thompson nodded grimly. "Agreed. Redirect available interceptors to cities with the lowest Lazarus Protocol coverage." That's their real play, he realized. The spheres are a distraction. That ship is carrying their primary weapon and it's heading straight for us. New contact, designation Theta. Torres reported. Configuration unlike any previously observed Kra'Vek vessel. Energy readings are off the charts. Drake studied the approaching ship with growing concern. Unlike the sleek, predatory lines of the other Kra'Vek vessels, this one was bulky, utilitarian, with what appeared to be an enormous cannon mounted on its forward section. Drake's mind raced. The Kra'Vek had clearly identified Cheyenne Mountain as the nexus of Earth's defense network. If they could neutralize the command center, the coordinated global response would be severely compromised. At current velocity, 4 minutes, Torres replied. Estimated time to weapons range? Thompson asked. Options? General Thompson demanded. What about the G-disruptors? Drake asked. The Helios network can't penetrate their modified shields, Patterson reported. And the Aegis arrays would require them to enter atmosphere. Dr. Holden shook his head. They're designed for closer range engagement. The alien vessel is maintaining too much distance. We need to redirect at least half of Prometheus' squadron to intercept that weapon ship, he decided. Drake stared at the tactical display, watching the massive weapon ship drawing inexorably closer to their position. Then his eyes fell on the Prometheus squadron interceptors currently engaged with the spheres over population centers. But the spheres? Torres began. General Thompson hesitated only a moment before nodding. Do it. Redirect the interceptors. Our secondary threat, Drake interrupted. If that ship destroys this mountain, we lose centralized command of all our defense systems. The spheres become irrelevant. The main screen shifted to show Supreme Commander Vorex, his alien features arranged in what might have been satisfaction. Sir, a communications officer called out. We're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through, Thompson ordered. The transmission cut off, leaving the war room in tense silence. "Humans of Earth," he began, "your defiance has been noted, but it ends now. You surprised us once. You will not do so again. Your major population centers are already being pacified by our control spheres. Your pathetic shields cannot stop them, and now your command center will be destroyed." "Prometheus Squadron ETA to intercept the weapons ship?" Drake asked. 3 minutes, Patterson replied. "They won't reach it before it enters firing range." Holden's eyes widened. "Theoretically, yes. We could create a gravity well between us and the weapons ship, but it would take time to reconfigure the network." "Then we need a new approach," Drake said, his mind working furiously. He turned to Dr. Holden. "The G-disruptors, could we modify them to create a focused gravitational lens? How much time?" 2 minutes, minimum." Drake nodded. "Do it." "Patterson, have Prometheus Squadron hold position at these coordinates." He marked a point in space directly between Cheyenne Mountain and the approaching alien vessel. "They need to be outside the gravity lens effect when it activates. 1 minute to weapons range," Torres warned. "G-disruptor reconfiguration at 87%, Holden reported, his fingers flying across his console. As Holden and his team worked frantically to reconfigure the G-disruptors, reports continued to pour in from around the world. The alien spheres had now deployed in 50 major cities, with varying degrees of effectiveness. In areas with high Lazarus protocol coverage, the population remained largely unaffected by the control spores. But in regions where the nanite treatment was still rolling out, thousands of civilians were falling under alien influence. "G-disruptors ready," Holden announced. Drake stared at the tactical display, watching as the massive alien weapon ship drew closer. The redirected Prometheus interceptors were racing to reach the designated coordinates, but it would be close. 30 seconds to weapons range. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The weapon ship suddenly lurched as if caught in an invisible current, its carefully calculated trajectory disrupted by the artificial gravity well. The enormous cannon mounted on its bow, which had been aimed directly at Cheyenne Mountain, now swung wildly off target. Drake didn't hesitate. "Activate the gravitational lens, now!" Across the Rocky Mountains, concealed G-disruptor units powered up simultaneously. Unlike conventional weapons, they emitted no visible energy. Instead, they manipulated the fabric of space-time itself, creating a powerful gravitational distortion focused precisely between Earth and the approaching alien vessel. But their victory was short-lived. The alien vessel's engines flared brightly as it fought against the gravitational distortion, its advanced technology allowing it to gradually stabilize its position. "They're compensating," Patterson reported grimly. "Estimated 30 seconds before they regain firing position." "It's working," Torres exclaimed. Drake watched tensely as the alien weapon ship struggled against the gravitational lens, slowly bringing its massive cannon back to bear on their position. The Prometheus interceptors were closing fast, but it would be desperately close. Still 20 seconds from optimal firing range. "Where are our interceptors?" Drake demanded. 15 seconds until they can fire, Torres warned. "Sir, that could create an uncontrolled gravitational collapse," Holden cautioned. "Increase power to the G-disruptors," Drake ordered. "Everything they've got." "Do it anyway," Drake insisted. "We need more time." 10 seconds to firing position, Torres counted down. Prometheus Squadron approaching optimal range. The gravitational distortion intensified, causing visible ripples in the space surrounding the alien vessel. Its progress slowed further, but the weapon continued to gradually align with its target. 5 seconds. "They're not going to make it in time," Patterson said quietly. Drake watched as the enormous alien cannon began to glow with building energy, a sickly green illumination that promised unprecedented destruction. The gravitational lens was delaying the inevitable, but not preventing it. The alien weapon reached full charge, the green glow now blinding even through the filtered view screen. The Prometheus interceptors were still seconds away from firing position. "All personnel, brace for impact," General Thompson ordered, his voice steady despite the imminent threat. "They've locked onto our exact coordinates," Torres reported, her voice tight. "Their targeting is precise to within 2 meters. Drake looked around the command center, at the men and women who had worked tirelessly to defend Earth against an overwhelming alien threat. They had accomplished the impossible, surprising the invaders with technology the aliens never suspected. But in the end, it hadn't been enough. Aboard the inevitable Dominion, Supreme Commander Vorex watched with satisfaction as the Annihilator reached firing position despite the humans' attempt to disrupt its trajectory with some kind of gravitational weapon. "Clever," he admitted, "but insufficient. The human vessels are approaching the Annihilator," Zex reported. "They'll be in firing range in seconds." On the tactical display, the massive weapon powered up to maximum charge, its targeting systems locked onto the mountain fortress that housed the humans' defensive coordination. "It doesn't matter," Vorex replied confidently. "The Annihilator will fire first. Without their command center, their resistance will crumble." Victory was finally within his grasp. 3, 2, 1. Vorex allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had fought well, had surprised them once, but in the end, they were simply outmatched. The Kra'Vek Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. Earth would be no different. A sickly green beam of concentrated energy lanced down from orbit, striking the Rocky Mountains with apocalyptic force. The quantum-phased plasma cut through rock as if it were tissue paper, boring toward the heart of Cheyenne Mountain with merciless precision. Inside Prometheus Command, emergency lighting bathed the war room in blood red as the mountain literally shook around them. Dust and small fragments of concrete rained from the ceiling. The Annihilator fired. "Direct hit," Torres shouted over the rumbling. "The beam is penetrating the outer layers of the facility. Levels 1 through 4 are breached," Patterson reported, his voice unnaturally calm despite the chaos. "The beam is continuing to penetrate." The mountain shuddered again, more violently this time. Warning klaxons blared as structural integrity alarms triggered throughout the complex. "Engaging now? But the Annihilator's shields are holding," Torres replied. Drake grabbed the edge of the tactical table as another tremor threatened to knock him off his feet. "Where are our interceptors?" "Engaging now, but the Annihilator's shields are holding," Torres replied. On the main screen, the Prometheus Squadron vessels opened fire on the massive alien weapon ship. Antimatter-tipped missiles detonated against the Kra'Vek shields in brilliant flashes of light, but the enormous cannon continued its relentless assault on the mountain. Levels 5 through 8 compromised. Patterson updated, strain finally showing in his voice. "The primary reactor's containment field is fluctuating." General Thompson activated the emergency command channel. "All personnel execute Protocol Omega." "I repeat, Protocol Omega is now in effect." Drake exchanged a grim look with the general. Protocol Omega was the contingency plan they'd hoped never to use, the evacuation and dispersal of command functions to secondary sites around the globe. "Sir, the Prometheus interceptors report their weapons are having minimal effect on the Annihilator," Torres said. "They're requesting permission to execute ramming maneuvers." Thompson hesitated only briefly. "Denied. We can't afford to lose those ships. Order them to break off and regroup at secondary positions." Another violent tremor shook the facility, this one accompanied by the shriek of tearing metal from somewhere deep within the mountain. "Levels 9 and 10 breached," Patterson announced. "The beam is approaching the main command level." "How long until complete penetration?" Drake asked. "At current rate, less than 2 minutes." Thompson turned to the assembled command staff. "Initiate data purge and begin evacuation procedures. Alpha Team will relocate to Site Valhalla, Beta Team to Site Olympus, Gamma Team to Site Asgard." As officers rushed to comply with the orders, Drake pulled Torres, Patterson, and Dr. Holden aside. "We stay until the last possible moment. I need options to counter that weapon." "The quantum phase shields can't stop it," Holden said, adjusting his glasses nervously. "The beam operates on multiple phase harmonics simultaneously. The G disruptors, Drake suggested. Peterson shook his head. We've already maxed their output. The aliens compensated for the gravitational distortion. Torres's eyes suddenly widened. Wait. What if we invert the distortion? Instead of creating a gravity well between us and them, we create a gravitational spike directly at their position, Drake finished, understanding immediately. Holden, is that possible? The scientist ran quick calculations on his tablet. Theoretically, yes. But it would require precise synchronization of all remaining G-disruptors, and we'd need to reconfigure their emission pattern. It might buy us some time, but not much. Do it, Drake ordered. Every second counts. As Holden worked frantically to reprogram the G-disruptors, the mountain shook more violently than ever. Warning displays flashed red across every console as the alien weapon continued its inexorable penetration. Quantum-phased plasmas approaching the command level, Patterson warned. 1 minute to breach. Drake looked around at the chaos of the evacuating command center. At the faces of men and women grimly performing their duties even as destruction bore down upon them. This was humanity's last stand, and they all knew it. G-disruptor reconfiguration complete, Holden announced. Ready to execute. Do it now, Drake commanded. Across the Rocky Mountain region, the network of G-disruptors simultaneously reversed their gravitational manipulation, creating not a lens but a spike, the concentrated point of extreme gravitational force directly at the position of the Annihilator. On the tactical display, they watched as the massive alien weapon ship suddenly lurched, caught in the unexpected gravitational attack. The green beam wavered, its perfect alignment with the mountain disrupted. It's working, Torres exclaimed. The beam has shifted by 23 degrees. But their victory was short-lived. The alien vessel's engines flared brilliantly as it fought against the gravitational spike, its advanced technology once again allowing it to compensate for the humans' desperate countermeasure. They're realigning, Patterson reported grimly. Estimated 30 seconds before they re-establish optimal firing position. General Thompson approached Drake, his face set in grim determination. Captain, you and your team need to evacuate now. Take the emergency transport to Site Valhalla. Sir, with respect, we can still... That's an order, Captain, Thompson interrupted firmly. Earth needs your team intact. I'll oversee the final evacuation. Drake wanted to argue, but he knew the general was right. Losing the entire command staff would be catastrophic for the continuing resistance. Yes, sir. Drake acknowledged reluctantly. Torres, Patterson, Holden, with me. As they hurried toward the emergency evacuation shaft, Patterson glanced back at the tactical display. The beam is realigning. 15 seconds to renewed contact. They reached the evacuation shaft. A narrow tube equipped with a high-speed elevator designed specifically for emergency extractions. The four of them crowded into the small compartment, the door sealing behind them with a pneumatic hiss. Taking us to sub-level 22, Evacuation Bay Alpha, Torres said as she initiated the descent sequence. The elevator dropped rapidly, accelerating to speeds that would have been dangerous under normal circumstances. Through the metal walls, they could feel the mountain shuddering as the alien weapon resumed its attack. General Thompson, Drake asked over the command channel. Still here, Captain, came the response, accompanied by the sounds of destruction in the background. The beam has re-established contact. Command level breach imminent. Sir, you need... Final evacuation transport is launching now, Thompson interrupted. I'm staying to ensure complete data purge. General. Good luck, Captain Drake, Thompson said, his voice steady despite everything. Remember, this isn't over. Not by a long shot. The communication channel suddenly filled with static, then went silent. General? Drake called. General Thompson? No response. The elevator continued its rapid descent as the mountain shook violently around them. Emergency lighting flickered, threatening to fail completely. We've lost contact with the command level, Torres reported, her voice tight with emotion. All channels. Before anyone could respond, a massive shockwave ripped through the facility, causing the elevator to lurch sickeningly. Warning alarms blared as the emergency braking system engaged, slowing their descent just enough to prevent a catastrophic impact when they reached the bottom. The doors opened to reveal Evacuation Bay Alpha, where a single hypersonic transport craft waited on the underground runway. Military personnel scrambled to board the remaining vehicles as the facility continued to collapse around them. "Move," Drake ordered, leading his team toward the transport. They reached the craft and quickly strapped into the acceleration couches. The pilot, already prepared for immediate departure, engaged the engines the moment the hatch sealed. "Hang on," the pilot warned as the transport accelerated down the runway, building speed rapidly. Through the viewport, Drake caught a glimpse of massive sections of the ceiling collapsing behind them as the transport shot into the emergency exit tunnel. The craft vibrated violently as it accelerated to hypersonic speeds within the confined space, racing to outrun the destruction of the mountain complex. Then, suddenly, they were airborne, erupting from the concealed mountainside exit into the open sky. The pilot immediately executed evasive maneuvers, keeping low to the terrain to avoid alien sensors. Drake craned his neck to look back at Cheyenne Mountain, or what remained of it. The entire top section of the mountain had simply vanished, replaced by a smoking crater of molten rock, the heart of Earth's defense network. The most heavily fortified military installation on the planet had been reduced to ruins in minutes. "My God," Holden whispered. "Set course for Site Valhalla," Drake ordered, his voice hollow. "Maximum stealth protocols." As the transport banked away from the devastation, tactical updates began streaming in from surviving defense networks around the globe. The news was uniformly grim. The Kra'Vek control spheres had now deployed in over 80 major cities worldwide. In areas with low Lazarus Protocol coverage, millions of civilians had fallen under alien influence, becoming docile servants of the invaders. Even in regions with higher nanite distribution, the aliens were making steady progress, adapting their control spores to overcome human countermeasures. Worse, with the destruction of Prometheus Command, Earth's defense networks were operating at reduced efficiency, lacking the centralized coordination that had made them effective. The Aegis Arrays and Helios network continued to engage the Kra'Vek fleet, but without synchronized targeting, their effectiveness had dropped by nearly 6. "Status of the Annihilator?" Drake asked, dreading the answer. Torres checked the incoming data streams. After destroying Cheyenne Mountain, it targeted the secondary command facility at NORAD. That site is gone. Now it's moving on to other military installation. Pentagon, NATO headquarters, Moscow Command, Beijing Strategic Center, all targeted for imminent strikes. "What about civilian leadership?" Drake asked. "Presidential bunker is still secure," Patterson reported. "European and Asian leadership have relocated to hardened facilities. But if the Annihilator can penetrate Cheyenne Mountain," he didn't need to finish the thought. "No facility on Earth could withstand that level of firepower." "Sir," Torres said quietly, "based on current projections, we'll lose all major military command structures within 12 hours. Civilian government centers within 24. After that, organized resistance would be nearly impossible. The Kra'Vek would have achieved their goal, decapitating Earth's leadership and defense capabilities, leaving the population vulnerable to complete subjugation." "How long to Site Valhalla?" Drake asked the pilot. 20 minutes, sir." Drake nodded, then turned to his team. "We need options. Think outside normal parameters. The conventional fight is lost. We need an unconventional solution." Fleet Commander Drex stood on the observation deck of the irresistible Conquest, watching with satisfaction as the Annihilator continued its systematic destruction of human military installations. Beside him, Supreme Commander Vorex maintained a stoic expression, but Drex could sense his subordinate's relief. "The humans fought well," Drex acknowledged magnanimously, now that victory was assured. Their deception and hidden technology were impressive. "Indeed," Vorex agreed cautiously. Their adaptability exceeds that of any species we've encountered in recent cycles. Yet, in the end, it proved insufficient. Drex noted, gesturing to the tactical display showing the steady progression of Kra'Vek control across the planet. As expected, Science Officer Trachis approached, data crystal pulsing with new information. Fleet Commander. The pacification spheres report varied success rates. In approximately 40% of target areas, the human population is showing resistance to the control spores. The nanites they've developed, Vorex explained, a biological countermeasure designed specifically to intercept foreign agents in their bloodstream. Drex clicked his mandibles dismissively. A clever trick, but ultimately meaningless. With their command structure eliminated, organized resistance will collapse. The remaining human military forces will be isolated and easily destroyed. There is one anomaly worth noting, Trachis continued. We're detecting unusual energy signatures from a region they call Antarctica. It appears to be some kind of research facility, but the power output far exceeds what would be expected for such an installation. Another deception? Drex questioned, turning to Vorex. Possibly, Vorex conceded. Their pattern has been to conceal their true capabilities. Then we will remove this potential threat as well, Drex decided. Direct the Annihilator to target this facility once it completes the destruction of their major command centers. Yes, Fleet Commander. As Trachis departed, Drex turned back to the viewport, contemplating the blue-green world below. The High Council will be pleased. Despite the initial setback, the conquest proceeds efficiently. We should have full control within a planetary cycle, as originally projected. Agreed, Vorex said carefully. Though I recommend continued vigilance, these humans have demonstrated remarkable resilience. Drex made a sound that might have been laughter. You give them too much credit, Vorex. Yes, they surprised us once with hidden technology. But technology alone is meaningless without the organization to deploy it effectively. We have severed their command structure. Their resistance is now headless, fragmented. The outcome is inevitable. On the tactical display, another human military installation disappeared in the green flash of the Annihilator's beam. Soon, Drex continued, they will understand what all conquered species eventually learn. Resistance against the Kra'Vek Empire is futile. Their world is ours. Their resources are ours, and those who survive will serve, as is the natural order of things. Site Valhalla, buried deep beneath the Arctic ice, was designed as the ultimate fallback position. A command center that officially didn't exist, known only to the highest levels of military leadership. Unlike Cheyenne Mountain, Valhalla wasn't intended to withstand direct assault. Its primary defense was its secrecy. Drake stood before the hastily assembled command staff, faces he recognized from various branches and nations, all united now by desperate circumstances. The mood in the underground facility was grim, the weight of recent losses hanging heavy in the air. The situation is critical, Drake began without preamble. In the 8 hours since the destruction of Prometheus Command, we've lost 63% of our major military installations worldwide. The Aegis arrays are operating at reduced capacity due to targeting synchronization issues. The Helios network has been reduced to 42% effectiveness after the aliens deployed a systematic counteroffensive against our orbital platforms. He gestured to the global tactical display, where vast sections pulsed with the red of Kra'Vek control. The pacification spheres have now deployed in 127 major population centers. Areas with high Lazarus Protocol coverage are maintaining resistance, but the aliens are adapting their control spores. We're seeing breakthrough infections even in fully nanite-treated populations. A weary-looking General Thomas from the European Command spoke up. What about the civilian government? The President and key cabinet members remain secure for now, Drake replied. But their bunker has been located by Kra'Vek sensors. The Annihilator is expected to target that facility within the next 3 hours. Murmurs of despair rippled through the assembled officers. In short, Drake continued, conventional resistance is failing. We cannot match their numbers in space. We cannot stop their annihilator weapon, and we cannot prevent the spread of their control spheres at the current rate. Then what's the point of this briefing? Asked a Russian colonel bitterly. To tell us we're finished? Drake's eyes hardened.
No.
To tell you that we need to change our approach entirely. He turned to Dr. Holden. Doctor, present your findings. Holden stepped forward, his usual nervous demeanor replaced by tired determination. We've been analyzing all available data on Kra'Vek technology, particularly the Annihilator and the command vessels. We've identified what we believe is a critical vulnerability. The display shifted to show a detailed schematic of a Kra'Vek Dominion-class warship. Their ships operate on a quantum entanglement principle for both propulsion and weapons systems. This allows for incredible power generation, but creates a potential weakness. The entanglement nodes must maintain precise alignment to prevent cascade failures. Patterson continued the explanation. These nodes are typically protected deep within their vessels, unreachable by conventional weapons. However, during our analysis of the Annihilator's attack pattern, we discovered something significant. The display zoomed in on the weapon ship's energy signature during firing. When the Annihilator fires, the ship's quantum matrix undergoes a momentary reorganization, a fraction of a second where the entanglement nodes become vulnerable. If we could deliver a precisely calibrated disruption charge at exactly that moment directly to their engine core, the resulting quantum cascade would destroy not just the Annihilator, but potentially trigger sympathetic failures in any connected vessels. Torres finished. Including the Dominion-class command ships? Someone asked. Theoretically, yes. Holden confirmed. They appear to share quantum harmonic frequencies for coordinated operations. It's how they maintain such perfect synchronization in battle. A moment of silence fell as the implications sank in. So we have a theoretical weakness, General Yamato of the Pacific Command said, but how do we exploit it? We can't get close enough to deliver such a charge. The Annihilator's defensive systems would destroy any approaching vessel long before it reached effective range. Drake took a deep breath. That's why we're proposing something that's never been attempted before. A direct quantum insertion. He nodded to Torres, who brought up a new schematic, this one showing a small cylindrical device. This is a quantum displacement vehicle, or QDV. It's a prototype developed under Project Prometheus but never field-tested. The theory is simple. Instead of trying to reach the Annihilator's core through normal space, we create a temporary quantum tunnel directly to the target coordinate. Is that even possible? Asked a skeptical Air Force general. The mathematics checks out, Holden replied. We've been developing quantum tunneling technology using promethium for specialized applications. This would be an extreme implementation, but the principles are sound. The problem, Drake continued, is that the QDV requires precise targeting data from inside the Annihilator itself. We need the exact quantum frequency of their entanglement nodes, which can only be obtained from direct scanning at close range. So we're back to the same problem, Colonel Petrov of the Russian contingent pointed out. We can't get close enough. Not with a conventional approach, Drake agreed. But there is one possibility. He hesitated, then continued. A stealth insertion. A small team, using a modified interceptor with promethium-enhanced cloaking technology, might be able to approach the Annihilator undetected during its next firing sequence. The room fell silent as the full implications became clear. That would be a one-way mission, General Yamato said quietly. Even if they reached the Annihilator and obtained the targeting data, there would be no way to escape the quantum cascade once the disruption charge was delivered. Drake nodded grimly. Yes. Whoever undertakes this mission won't be coming back. And who exactly do you propose for this suicide run? Thomas asked. Drake met his gaze steadily. Myself, Patterson, Torres, and Dr. Holden. We're the most familiar with the technology and the mission parameters. Absolutely not, General Yamato objected immediately. You're too valuable to the continuing resistance. If when this mission fails, we'll need leadership with your experience. "With respect, General," Drake countered. "If this mission fails, there won't be much left to lead. The Annihilator will destroy our remaining command facilities within 24 hours. After that, organized resistance becomes nearly impossible." Before the argument could continue, Patterson stood. "Sir, I volunteered to lead the insertion team." "As do I," Torres added, rising as well. "The QDV will require on-site calibration," Holden said, adjusting his glasses. "I should go as well." Drake looked at his team, the people he'd fought alongside since the beginning of this impossible war, and felt a surge of pride mingled with profound sadness. "Very well," he conceded. "Patterson will lead the insertion team. Torres and Holden will accompany him. You'll need a pilot, someone with experience handling experimental craft." "I'll do it," came a voice from the back of the room. A man in his early 40s with the weathered face of a veteran test pilot stepped forward. "Major Frank Taylor. I've logged more hours in Promethium-enhanced vehicles than anyone still breathing." Drake nodded. "Thank you, Major." "This is insanity," Thomas protested. "The odds of success must be infinitesimal. We calculated approximately 3.7% chance of the team reaching the Annihilator undetected," Holden admitted. "The probability of successfully delivering the disruption charge and triggering a quantum cascade is considerably lower. So we're betting humanity's survival on a mission with less than 1% chance of success," Thomas said bitterly. "No," Drake corrected him. "We're ensuring that humanity doesn't go down without a fight. Even if the mission fails, we will have tried everything possible." He turned to Patterson, Torres, Holden, and Taylor. "You have 6 hours to prepare. The Annihilator is projected to target the Antarctic research facility after destroying the presidential bunker. That will be our window of opportunity when it repositions and recharges for its next attack." The volunteer team nodded solemnly, the weight of their mission evident in their expressions. They were agreeing to die in the faint hope of saving their species from subjugation or extinction. "Dismissed," Drake ordered. "Prepare your equipment and get whatever rest you can." As the command staff dispersed, Drake remained at the tactical display, studying the relentless advance of Kra'Vek control across the planet he had sworn to defend. Humanity's darkest hour had arrived, with only the faintest glimmer of hope remaining. A desperate gambit with minimal chance of success. But as long as humans still drew breath, the fight would continue, even against impossible odds. Especially against impossible odds. It was, perhaps, the one thing the Kra'Vek had never truly understood about the species they had so grievously underestimated. The modified interceptor drifted silently through the void, its Promethium-enhanced cloaking system rendering it virtually invisible to Kra'Vek sensors. Major Frank Taylor guided the craft with feather-light touches to the control surfaces, maintaining a precise trajectory that would bring them within scanning range of the Annihilator without triggering proximity alerts. In the cramped cabin behind him, Patterson, Torres, and Holden performed final checks on their equipment. The mission had exactly one chance of success, and that required everything to function perfectly. "Promethium core stable at 97%, Torres reported, monitoring the specialized power source that enabled their stealth approach. "Quantum scanner calibrated for Kra'Vek frequency ranges." Patterson checked his tactical display. "Annihilator holding position over the Atlantic. Target acquisition of the presidential bunker in progress. Estimated time to weapon discharge, 14 minutes. "Status on the QDV?" Taylor asked, his eyes never leaving the navigation controls. Dr. Holden ran his hands over the cylindrical device secured in the center of the cabin, their one hope of turning the tide against the overwhelming alien force. "Displacement field generators nominal. Quantum tunneling matrices aligned. It's as ready as it's going to be." Taylor nodded, making a minute course adjustment. "We're entering their outer sensor perimeter now. If they're going to detect us, it'll be in the next 30 seconds. The cabin fell silent, tension thick enough to cut with a knife as they drifted deeper into enemy-controlled space. On the tactical display, the massive form of the Annihilator grew larger, a hulking monstrosity of alien technology designed for the sole purpose of destroying humanity's last defenses. Surrounding the weapon ship, hundreds of Kra'Vek vessels maintained a defensive formation, ready to intercept any approaching threat. Yet none of them altered course or gave any indication they detected the tiny human craft slipping through their lines. "Outer perimeter cleared," Taylor murmured after the longest half-minute of their lives. "Beginning approach vector to optimal scanning position." Patterson turned to Torres and Holden. "Final equipment check. Once we're in position, we'll have less than 60 seconds to obtain the targeting data before the Annihilator fires." They each verified their specialized equipment. Torres, with the quantum scanner that would capture the essential frequency data, Holden with the QDV that would deliver the killing blow, and Patterson with the tactical systems that would coordinate the entire operation. 5 minutes to optimal position, Taylor announced, cutting primary thrusters, switching to maneuvering only. The interceptor drifted now, using only occasional bursts from its positioning jets to maintain course. Even these tiny adjustments were risky. Each energy emission, no matter how small, created a potential signature that Kra'Vek sensors might detect. "Annihilator power buildup at 67%, Torres reported. "They're charging faster than anticipated. Can we accelerate our approach?" Patterson asked. Taylor shook his head slightly. "Not without increasing our energy signature. We need to maintain stealth all the way in." "We'll make it," Holden said with unexpected confidence. "The mathematics is sound." The interceptor continued its silent approach, now close enough that the Annihilator filled their viewports, a grotesque monument to alien destructive power. Its massive forward cannon glowed with building energy, preparing to fire upon the underground bunker that sheltered Earth's civilian leadership. 90 seconds to optimal scanning position, Taylor reported. Annihilator power buildup at... Patterson took a deep breath, mentally reviewing the mission parameters one final time. They would have a single, brief window when the Annihilator's quantum matrix reorganized during firing, a fraction of a second when its entanglement nodes became vulnerable. In that instant, Torres would capture the precise quantum frequency data. Holden would calibrate the QDV, and Patterson would coordinate the deployment sequence. If any part failed, the mission failed, and humanity lost. 60 seconds, Taylor said quietly. Patterson looked at each member of his team, people he had fought alongside who had volunteered for this suicide mission without hesitation. Whatever happened in the next few minutes, they had already demonstrated the very best of humanity. "It's been an honor," he said simply. Torres nodded, her eyes meeting his briefly before returning to her scanner. "Likewise." 30 seconds, Taylor announced. "We're almost in optimal position." On the tactical display, the Annihilator's power readings continued to climb. 90%. 15 seconds to scanning position, Taylor said, making a final course adjustment. Annihilator preparing to fire. "Get ready." Torres activated the quantum scanner, its sensitive receptors aimed directly at the alien weapon ship. Scanner active. Targeting their core matrix. 10 seconds, Taylor counted down. 9. The Annihilator's cannon now blazed with sickly green energy, moments away from unleashing its devastating attack on Earth's leadership. 7. 6. 5. Holden's hands hovered over the QDV controls, ready to input the targeting data the moment it was captured. 4. 3. 2. Energy spike, Torres warned. "They're firing now." The Annihilator's cannon released its horrific beam, a column of quantum-phased plasma that cut through space toward Earth's surface. Simultaneously, its internal systems underwent the momentary reorganization they had been waiting for. "Scanning," Torres announced, her fingers dancing across her console as the quantum scanner captured the momentarily exposed frequency patterns of the alien weapon's entanglement nodes. For 3 crucial seconds, the scanner absorbed data, mapping the precise quantum signature of the Kra'Vek technology. Then the window closed as the Annihilator's systems returned to normal configuration. "Did we get it?" Patterson demanded. Torres's face broke into a fierce grin. Complete frequency map captured. We have everything we need. Transferring data to the QDV now, Holden said, connecting the scanner to the displacement vehicle. His console lit up as the critical targeting information flowed into the device. How long for calibration? Patterson asked. 2 minutes, Holden replied, already working the complex calculations required to align the quantum tunneling matrices with the Annihilator's frequency patterns. We don't have 2 minutes, Taylor warned. I'm reading energy fluctuations from multiple Kra'Vek vessels. They may be detecting our scanner emissions. Patterson made a split-second decision. Torres, initiate secondary protocol. She nodded grimly, activating a specialized communication system. Transmitting frequency data to Site Valhalla now. Encrypted burst complete. It was their insurance policy. Even if they failed to deliver the QDV, the critical frequency data would reach Earth's remaining command structure, potentially allowing for another attempt. Calibration at 43%, Holden reported. Annihilator recharging for its next target. Estimated time to firing 6 minutes. We've got company, Taylor announced tersely. 3 Kra'Vek interceptors altering course in our direction. Patterson checked the tactical display. The alien vessels weren't heading directly toward them. They hadn't been spotted yet. But the interceptors were beginning a standard search pattern that would eventually bring them into detection range. How much longer, Holden? He asked. Calibration at 67%. Need at least another minute. Taylor, can you adjust our position? Give us some cover from those interceptors. The pilot shook his head. Not without compromising our approach to the Annihilator. We're committed now. Patterson considered their rapidly diminishing options. Torres, prepare countermeasures. If they detect us before calibration is complete, we'll need to buy Holden some time. She nodded, activating the interceptor's limited defensive systems. Systems they had hoped not to use because of the energy signatures they would produce. Calibration at 82%, Holden reported, fingers working frantically across the QDV's control panel. Almost there. On the tactical display, the Kra'Vek interceptors continued their search pattern, drawing inexorably closer to their position. The Annihilator's power levels climbed as it prepared for its next attack, the window for their mission closing rapidly. Kra'Vek vessels at extreme detection range, Taylor warned. If their sensors sweep in our direction now, calibration at 96%, Holden said. Just a few more seconds. The tension in the cabin was nearly unbearable as they balanced on the knife edge between success and failure, between humanity's last hope and its final defeat. They've changed course, Taylor suddenly hissed. They're heading directly toward us. They've detected something. Holden, Patterson demanded. Calibration complete, the scientist announced. QDV ready for deployment. Patterson didn't hesitate. Deploy now. Holden activated the quantum displacement vehicle. The cylindrical device hummed with building energy as its promethium core powered up to maximum output. Unlike conventional weapons, the QDV didn't need to physically reach its target. Instead, it created a quantum tunnel, a temporary wormhole that would deliver its disruption charge directly to the heart of the Annihilator, regardless of distance or physical barriers. Quantum tunnel forming, Holden reported, targeting the Annihilator's primary entanglement node cluster. On their sensor displays, a strange distortion appeared, a twisting of space-time itself as the QDV forced open a direct connection between its current position and the selected coordinates deep within the alien weapon ship. Kra'Vek interceptors accelerating, Taylor warned. They've definitely spotted us now. 30 seconds to weapons range. Tunnel stability at 64%, Holden continued, monitoring the QDV's progress. Need at least 80% for successful charge delivery. We won't have 30 seconds, Patterson decided. Taylor, evasive maneuvers. Torres, deploy countermeasures now. The interceptors suddenly lurched as Taylor engaged its main engines, abandoning stealth for speed and maneuverability. Simultaneously, Torres launched a series of Promethium-enhanced decoys devices that mimicked their ship's signature, creating multiple false targets for the approaching Kra'Vek vessels. Tunnel stability at 73%, Holden called out above the growing chaos. Almost there. Patterson watched the tactical display as the Kra'Vek interceptors split up, some pursuing their decoys while others continued toward their actual position. The ruse had bought them a few precious seconds, but not enough. Weapons lock detected, Torres warned. They're firing. Brace, Taylor shouted, throwing the interceptor into a desperate evasive maneuver. The small craft shuddered violently as alien energy weapons blazed past, missing by mere meters. The sudden acceleration threatened to tear the fragile quantum tunnel before it fully stabilized. Tunnel stability fluctuating, Holden reported anxiously. 78%. Another near miss rocked the interceptor, systems flickering momentarily from the energy discharge. We can't take a direct hit, Taylor warned. One good shot and we're done. Tunnel stability at 82%. Holden suddenly announced. We're good. Delivering disruption charge now. The QDV pulsed with brilliant blue-white light as it fired its payload, not through normal space, but through the quantum tunnel directly into the Annihilator's core. For a brief anticlimactic moment, nothing seemed to happen. Did it work? Torres asked, still manning the countermeasures as Kra'Vek weapons fire continued to streak past their vessel. Holden studied his readings intently. Quantum signature destabilizing. The charge is disrupting their entanglement nodes. It's working. On the tactical display, the Annihilator's energy readings began to fluctuate wildly as its quantum matrix lost coherence. The carefully aligned entanglement nodes that powered its devastating weapon and propulsion systems began to fail in cascading sequence. Taylor, get us clear, Patterson ordered. Maximum distance now. The pilot needed no encouragement, pushing the interceptor's engines beyond safety limits as they raced away from the doomed alien weapon ship. Behind them, the Kra'Vek interceptors broke off their attack, seemingly confused by the sudden chaos erupting throughout their fleet. Quantum cascade initiating, Holden reported with clinical detachment. Sympathetic resonance detected in connected vessels. This is far more effective than we projected. Supreme Commander Vorex was in the middle of reporting the Annihilator's successful destruction of another human command facility when the first alarm sounded throughout the inevitable Dominion. What is happening? Fleet Commander Drex demanded, facial tentacles writhing with irritation at the interruption. Science Officer Trachis rushed to her console, data crystal pulsing rapidly as she analyzed the incoming information. Quantum disturbance detected in the Annihilator's core matrix. It's experiencing some kind of entanglement failure. Impossible, Drex dismissed. The quantum matrix is perfectly stable. Run a diagnostic. Sir, a communications officer interrupted. The Annihilator is not responding to command signals. Vorex moved quickly to the tactical display, studying the weapon ship's telemetry, with growing concern. These readings can't be correct. The entanglement nodes are showing simultaneous decoherence patterns. Confirmed, Trachis reported, her scientific detachment giving way to alarm. The Annihilator's quantum matrix is collapsing, and the resonance patterns are spreading to connected vessels. Spreading? Drex echoed incredulously. How? Before Trachis could respond, the main view screen shifted to show the Annihilator in orbit above Earth. The massive weapon ship was now surrounded by a strange, shimmering distortion as its power systems fluctuated chaotically. Evacuate the Annihilator immediately, Vorex ordered. Get all personnel. His command came too late. The weapon ship suddenly bulged in impossible ways, as if being torn apart from within by forces that defied conventional physics. Then, in a silent flash of brilliant light, it simply ceased to exist, not exploding outward like conventional destruction, but imploding into itself as its quantum matrix completely collapsed. By the eternal void, someone whispered. But the destruction didn't end there. Across the tactical display, alarm symbols began appearing on dozens. then hundreds of Kra'Vek vessels that had been quantum-linked to the Annihilator for coordinated operations. The quantum resonance is propagating through the fleet, Tracus reported, her voice tight with barely controlled fear. Any vessel that shared entanglement protocols with the Annihilator is experiencing sympathetic decoherence. Break the quantum links, Drex roared. Isolate all systems. Officers scrambled to comply, but for many vessels it was already too late. Throughout Earth orbit, Kra'Vek ships began to suffer the same fate as the Annihilator, their quantum matrices collapsing, the vessels imploding into nothingness as the laws of physics reasserted themselves violently in the absence of controlled quantum entanglement. The inescapable subjugation is reporting critical entanglement failures, a communications officer announced in rising panic. Commander Zex requests immediate assistance. On the view screen, they watched helplessly as the massive Dominion-class warship shuddered, encased in the same shimmering distortion that had preceded the Annihilator's destruction. Moments later, it too vanished in a flash of quantum collapse. How is this possible? Drex demanded, rounding on Vorex and Tracus. What weapon could cause this? Tracus analyzed the sensor readings with remarkable composure given the catastrophe unfolding around them. It appears to be a precisely calibrated disruption of our quantum entanglement frequencies. The humans somehow obtained our exact frequency patterns and used them to trigger a cascade failure. But how did they deliver such a weapon? Vorex questioned. Our sensors detected no approach. Unknown, Tracus admitted, but the evidence suggests some form of quantum tunneling technology, a directed attack that bypassed normal space to strike directly at the Annihilator's core. Vorex's blood ran cold as understanding dawned. They've weaponized their Prometheum element's quantum properties, created something we never anticipated. The tactical display continued to update, showing the devastating spread of quantum collapse throughout the Kra'Vek fleet. Already, over 40% of their vessels had been destroyed or critically damaged by the cascading failure of their entanglement systems. The inexorable domination is also reporting critical failures, the communications officer announced. They've managed to isolate their primary systems, but their weapons and propulsion are offline. Fleet Commander Drex stood rigid with shock and fury, watching as his invincible armada disintegrated before his eyes. How, he demanded again. How could primitives who barely managed spaceflight possess technology capable of this? They're not primitives, Vorex said quietly. They never were. Everything they showed us was deliberate misdirection. We saw what they wanted us to see, and we judged them accordingly. He turned to face Drex directly. And that was our fatal mistake. Before Drex could respond, another alarm sounded, this one from within the inevitable Dominion itself. Quantum fluctuations detected in our secondary entanglement nodes, Tracus reported. The cascade is reaching us. Isolate all systems immediately, Vorex ordered. Emergency protocols. Sever all quantum connections. As crew members rushed to comply, Vorex turned back to the tactical display, watching the systematic destruction of what had been, mere minutes ago, the most powerful invasion force the Kra'Vek Empire had ever assembled. In a single, brilliant stroke, the humans had turned the Kra'Vek's greatest technological advantage, their mastery of quantum entanglement, into their greatest vulnerability. They had not attempted to match the aliens' overwhelming firepower or numbers. Instead, they had identified and exploited a fundamental weakness, using ingenuity and precision rather than brute force. And in doing so, they had changed the entire course of the war. Captain Marcus Drake stood in the command center of Site Valhalla, surrounded by stunned silence as the tactical displays showed the impossible unfolding in Earth orbit. What had begun as a desperate, last-ditch mission with minimal chance of success had turned into the most devastating counterattack in human history. Confirmed destruction of the Annihilator. Torres's replacement at the sensor station reported, voice tight with controlled excitement. Quantum cascade effect spreading through the Kra'Vek fleet. Current count shows 873 vessels affected, including 2 of their Dominion-class command ships. The QDV worked better than we ever imagined, Dr. Holden's assistant said, studying the telemetry data. The quantum resonance propagated through their entire command network. Any vessel that shared entanglement protocols with the Annihilator has either been destroyed or severely disabled. Drake absorbed this information. His thoughts with the 4 brave souls who had made this moment possible. Any signal from Major Taylor's interceptor? The communications officer shook her head. No, sir. Last transmission was the frequency data burst. They were under attack by Kra'Vek interceptors, positioned approximately 2,000 kilometers from the Annihilator when it was destroyed. Drake nodded, grief mixing with pride and determination. Patterson, Torres, Holden, and Taylor had known it was a one-way mission. They had volunteered anyway, and their sacrifice had just saved humanity. Status of the remaining Kra'Vek forces, he asked. Disorganized and in retreat, the tactical officer replied. Without their command ships and with their quantum network compromised, they've lost centralized control. Individual vessel commanders appear to be acting independently, most withdrawing to defensive positions behind the moon. General Yamato stepped forward. The pacification spheres have ceased operation worldwide. Without the command signal from the fleet, they've gone dormant. For the first time in weeks, genuine hope spread through the command center. The aliens' seemingly unstoppable advance had not just been halted, it had been dramatically reversed. What about the reinforcements detected near Jupiter? Drake asked. Still inbound, but their arrival time has been pushed back. The sensor officer reported. They appear to have reduced speed, possibly in response to what happened here. Drake studied the tactical display, where the remnants of the once mighty Kra'Vek fleet scattered in disarray. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but the war was far from over. Earth had won a crucial battle. Perhaps the crucial battle, but the Kra'Vek Empire would not accept defeat easily. We have a window of opportunity now, he told the assembled command staff. The enemy is in disarray, their primary weapon destroyed, their command structure fractured. We need to press our advantage. How? Asked General Thomas, his earlier skepticism replaced by cautious optimism. We still don't match their numbers, even with their losses. Drake smiled grimly. We don't need to match their numbers. Patterson and his team just proved that. What we need is to continue what they started, target the enemy's vulnerabilities rather than confronting their strengths. He turned to Holden's assistant. How quickly can we produce more QDVs? With the production facilities in Antarctica untouched, we could have at least a dozen ready within 48 hours, she replied. The limiting factor is the refined promethium required for the quantum tunneling matrices. Make it your top priority, Drake ordered, and prepare a briefing on potential applications beyond what we just witnessed. If we can create quantum tunnels with this precision, there may be other strategic advantages we haven't considered. As the command center erupted into focused activity, Drake took a moment to look at the image of Earth displayed prominently on the main screen. For the first time since the Kra'Vek arrived, the planet's orbital space was clearing of alien vessels. Humanity had not just survived. It had struck back decisively against an overwhelmingly superior force, all because 4 people had been willing to sacrifice everything on a mission with almost no chance of success. All because humans, when pushed to the brink of extinction, refused to simply accept their fate. The Kra'Vek had made one fundamental error in their calculations. They had judged humanity's technological capability but failed to account for the intangible qualities that defined a species. Determination, ingenuity, and the absolute refusal to surrender even against impossible odds. And that mistake might well cost them the war. 3 days after what was already being called the quantum miracle, Captain Marcus Drake stood at the command table in Site Valhalla, surrounded by a renewed sense of purpose. The holographic display showed Earth and its surrounding space, the red indicators of Kra'Vek forces now reduced and scattered, retreating to defensive positions on the far side of the moon. We've confirmed production of 16 functional QDVs, reported Dr. Elise Werner, who had stepped up to fill Holden's role. Quantum targeting systems have been refined based on the data Patterson's team transmitted. Precision has increased by approximately 3. Drake nodded, studying the tactical display. And the Lazarus protocol. Nanite distribution has reached 93% of military personnel and 78% of civilians globally, replied Colonel Marquez, the medical command representative. The latest iteration includes programming to counteract the Kra'Vek control spores entirely. What about our conventional forces? Drake asked. General Yamato gestured to the display. The Aegis arrays are back to 87% operational capacity with improved targeting algorithms. The Helios network has been largely restored, with 64 platforms back online, and we've accelerated production of Prometheus-class interceptors, 36 new vessels launching within the next 12 hours. Drake allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity had been pushed to the brink of defeat. But in just 3 days, they had regrouped and readied themselves for a counteroffensive. The tide had turned dramatically. The enemy remains dangerous, he cautioned. Their reinforcements are still inbound, and they still outnumber us. But we've proven they're not invincible. Now we need to press our advantage before they can reorganize. He manipulated the tactical display, zooming in on the far side of the moon where the remaining Kra'Vek vessels had gathered, including the inevitable Dominion and the surviving Dominion-class warship, the inexorable Domination. Our intelligence suggests they're attempting to repair their quantum networks and restore functionality to their damaged vessels. We can't allow them that time. What's your proposal, Captain? General Thomas asked. Drake's expression hardened. Operation Thunderstrike. A coordinated attack using our new QDVs against their command ships, followed immediately by a full assault from our conventional forces. He expanded the tactical display, highlighting key points around Earth and lunar orbit. We'll deploy 12 QDVs in 3 waves targeting their primary command vessels and any ship showing signs of quantum network restoration. The remaining 4 will be held in reserve. And if their reinforcements arrive during the operation? General Yamato inquired. Then we'll have already eliminated the ships that could coordinate with them, Drake replied. Their advantage has always been synchronized operations through quantum entanglement. Without that, they're just individual vessels fighting independently. And we've proven we can match them ship to ship. The assembled commanders nodded in agreement. The math was simple. Even with their numerical superiority, the Kra'Vek without their quantum coordination were vulnerable to Earth's more adaptable forces. There's one more thing, Drake added, his tone growing somber. Intelligence reports indicate the Kra'Vek are holding human prisoners aboard several vessels, civilians captured during the deployment of their control spheres, along with military personnel from various engagements. He brought up a new set of data on the display. Estimated numbers and locations of human captives based on intercepted Kra'Vek communications. Our most conservative estimate places at least 8,000 humans aboard those ships. Many are being subjected to experimentation or interrogation. A tense silence fell over the command center. The implications were clear. Their planned attack would likely result in the deaths of those prisoners. Can we mount rescue operations first? Asked Colonel Ivanova of the Russian contingent. Drake shook his head grimly. Not without telegraphing our intentions and losing the element of surprise. And if we delay our attack, we risk the enemy restoring their quantum networks and regaining their advantage. It was the impossible moral calculus of war, weighing the lives of thousands against the potential millions or billions who would suffer if the Kra'Vek regained their footing and resumed their conquest of Earth. We need to make a decision, Drake continued. Operation Thunderstrike is planned, knowing we'll sacrifice those prisoners or delay and risk giving the enemy time to recover. General Thomas sighed heavily. Those people have families, lives, to condemn them knowingly. And how many more will we condemn if we hesitate? General Yamato countered. The Kra'Vek showed no mercy with their annihilator weapon. They targeted our civilian leadership without remorse. The debate continued. Passionate but disciplined, each commander weighing the moral burden against the strategic necessity. Drake listened. allowing the full discussion to unfold while carrying the weight of knowing that ultimately the final recommendation would fall to him. Finally, he raised a hand, bringing the deliberation to a close. "We proceed with Operation Thunderstrike," he declared, his voice firm but heavy with the responsibility of the decision. "But we modify our targeting parameters. The QDVs will be directed at propulsion and weapon systems only, avoiding areas identified as potential prisoner holds, and will deploy specialized rescue teams with the second wave, ready to board and extract captives where possible." He looked around the table, meeting each commander's eyes. "It's not a perfect solution. We'll still lose people. But we owe it to both those prisoners and the rest of humanity to try." The commanders nodded solemnly. It wasn't a choice anyone wanted to make, but it was the best compromise between strategic necessity and moral obligation. "Prepare your forces," Drake ordered. "Operation Thunderstrike commences in 6 hours." Fleet Commander Drex paced the command deck of the Inevitable Dominion, his 4 arms clasped tightly behind his back, facial tentacles twitching with barely restrained fury. Around him, repair crews worked frantically to restore the ship's damaged systems, the normal precision of Kra'Vek operations replaced by desperate improvisation. "Status report," he demanded of Vorex, who stood monitoring the restoration efforts. "Primary quantum network remains offline," Vorex reported carefully. "Engineering estimates at least another 12 cycles before minimal functionality can be restored. Weapon systems are at 63% capacity. Propulsion at 40%, and the inexorable domination, slightly better condition. Their weapons are at 71%, propulsion at 52%. They managed to isolate their quantum systems more quickly when the cascade began." Drex hissed in frustration. "And our fleet? Approximately 40% of our vessels remain combat capable. The rest are either destroyed or too damaged for effective operations." The fleet commander stopped his pacing, turning to stare at the tactical display showing their diminished forces clustered in lunar orbit. Less than a week ago, he had commanded the most powerful invasion fleet the Kra'Vek had deployed in 50 cycles. Now, that magnificent armada was reduced to a collection of damaged vessels struggling to maintain basic functionality. "How?" he demanded, though it was far from the first time he had asked the question. "How did they do this to us?" Science Officer Trachis approached, data crystal pulsing steadily despite the chaos around her. "Our analysis of the weapon they deployed continues to suggest a form of quantum tunneling technology. Utilizing their promethium element, they effectively created a temporary wormhole that bypassed all our physical defenses, delivering a precisely calibrated disruption charge directly to the Annihilator's entanglement nodes." "I understand the mechanism," Drex snapped. "What I want to know is how these humans, these supposedly primitive humans who had barely achieved spaceflight, developed technology that our own scientists have only theorized about." Trachis maintained her scientific composure. "Evidence suggests they have been far more technologically advanced than our intelligence indicated from the beginning. Their discovery and development of promethium appears to have accelerated their progress exponentially in certain fields, particularly quantum manipulation. They deceived us," Vorex added. "Deliberately. Everything we observed during our surveillance period was carefully constructed to make us underestimate them." Drex rounded on his subordinate. "Yes, Vorex. A fact you failed to recognize until it was too late." Before Vorex could respond, an alarm sounded from the sensor station. "Fleet Commander, we're detecting unusual energy fluctuations near Earth orbit. The signature matches the weapon they used against the Annihilator." Drex's blood ran cold. "They're preparing another attack. Multiple signatures," the sensor officer continued, voice rising with alarm. "At least 12 distinct sources. Deploying in formation." "Target vectors?" Vorex demanded. "Analyzing, they appear to be positioning for optimal strikes against our command vessels and any ships showing signs of quantum network restoration." Drex's mind raced through options that were rapidly diminishing. Without their quantum networks, they couldn't coordinate an effective defense or counterattack. Individual vessel commanders would be forced to act independently, precisely the scenario where the adaptable humans had proven superior. Emergency dispersal, he ordered suddenly. All vessels to execute random course changes at maximum available thrust, break predictable formations immediately. As his orders were relayed throughout the remaining fleet, Drex turned to Vorex and Trakus. We need a counter to these quantum weapons. Now, without understanding the precise mechanism, developing a countermeasure would be, Trakus began. I don't want excuses. Drex interrupted. I want solutions. These humans have made a mockery of the Empire's most powerful invasion force. The High Council will demand explanations and executions if we fail to salvage this situation. On the tactical display, the Kra'Vek vessels began their desperate dispersal, breaking formation and scattering in all directions like startled prey rather than apex predators. It was a humiliating maneuver for the proud warriors of the Empire, but survival now took precedence over dignity. Fleet Commander, the communications officer called. We're receiving reports of human vessels launching from Earth. Attack formation. They're coordinating a conventional assault with their quantum weapons, Vorex realized. A two-phase attack first disrupt our command structure, then overwhelm our scattered forces. Drex's facial tentacles writhed with rage and frustration. Everything about this campaign had gone catastrophically wrong, from the humans' initial deception to their devastating quantum counterattack. Now they were pressing their advantage, sensing weakness and moving to finish what they had started. How long until the main fleet reinforcements arrive? He demanded. Still approximately 36 hours at current velocity, Vorex replied. 36 hours. Too long to wait for rescue, but perhaps not too long to implement a desperate measure. Drex made his decision. Begin transferring all high-value prisoners to the inevitable Dominion, he ordered. Priority on military officers and scientific personnel. Vorex and Trakus exchanged concerned glances. You intend to use them as hostages? Vorex asked carefully. I intend to use every asset available to salvage this situation, Drex replied coldly. And prepare the singularity device. The command deck fell silent at these words. Even Trakus's perpetual scientific detachment wavered. Fleet Commander, she said cautiously, the singularity device is experimental technology. Its effects are not fully predictable, especially in proximity to a gravity well like Earth. Is it functional? Drex demanded. Yes, but then ready it for deployment. Drex turned back to the tactical display, watching as the human forces gathered for their assault. We may have underestimated these humans, but they are about to learn the full extent of Kra'Vek resolve. If we cannot conquer this world, we will ensure no one else can either. Operation Thunderstrike commenced precisely on schedule, the QDVs deploying from concealed orbital platforms around Earth. Unlike conventional weapons, they gave no visible sign of activation. No energy buildup, no dramatic launch sequence. One moment they were dormant, the next they were creating precisely targeted quantum tunnels to their designated Kra'Vek vessels. In the command center at Site Valhalla, Drake watched the initial phase unfold on the tactical display. Status of First Wave, QDVs 1 through 4 active in establishing quantum tunnels, reported the operations officer. Targets acquired, inexorable domination propulsion systems, 2 destroyer-class vessels showing quantum network restoration, and 1 heavy cruiser with active weapon systems. Drake nodded, tension evident in his rigid posture. Everything hinged on this first strike. If the Kra'Vek had developed countermeasures to the quantum tunneling technology, the entire operation would need to be recalibrated on the fly. Tunnels established, the officer continued. Disruption charges deploying now. On the tactical display, the targeted Kra'Vek vessels suddenly flared with energy distortions as the quantum charges reached their destinations. Unlike the catastrophic cascade failure that had destroyed the Annihilator and its connected vessels, these disruptions were precisely calibrated to disable specific systems while minimizing the risk to potential human prisoners. Direct hits on all targets, the sensor officer announced. The inexorable domination's propulsion is offline. Destroyer targets show complete power failure. Heavy cruiser weapon systems disabled. A ripple of satisfaction went through the command center. The first phase had worked perfectly. Enemy response? Drake asked. Chaotic dispersal pattern, replied the tactical officer. They're breaking formation and executing random course changes. Standard anti-targeting protocol. No coordinated defense. Drake allowed himself a small smile. They're reacting exactly as expected. Deploy second wave of QDVs and launch Prometheus Squadron. As the next phase of the operation commenced, the holographic display updated to show the human interceptors rising from Earth, their antimatter engines glowing brilliantly against the darkness of space. Sleek, angular, and devastatingly effective, the Prometheus-class vessels represented humanity's first purpose-built ships for interstellar combat. All squadrons reporting ready, announced the flight operations officer. Engaging designated targets in 3, 2, the human vessels accelerated to attack velocity, targeting the now scattered and disorganized Kra'Vek fleet. Without their quantum coordination, the alien ships responded individually, some fighting with the legendary Kra'Vek ferocity, others attempting to withdraw to safer positions. Second wave of QDVs deployed, reported the operations officer, targeting additional command vessels and weapons platform. Drake nodded, then turned to the Special Operations Commander. Status of rescue teams. Insertion vessels launched and tracking with Prometheus Squadron Alpha, the commander replied. They'll breach designated targets once the QDVs disable their defensive systems. The battle unfolded with a precision that would have seemed impossible just days earlier when humanity had been on the brink of defeat. Now, their forces moved with confident coordination, pressing the advantage against an enemy that had never experienced such a reversal of fortune. Multiple Kra'Vek vessels disabled and adrift, reported the tactical officer. Prometheus Squadron engaging remaining combat-capable targets. Minimal losses on our side. Drake studied the tactical display intently, looking for signs of unexpected resistance or counter-strategy. The Kra'Vek were renowned throughout their conquered territories for their adaptability in battle. Even in disarray, they remained dangerous. What about the inevitable Dominion? He asked. Any response from their flagship? The sensor officer frowned. Unusual energy readings from their position. They appear to be gathering human prisoners aboard. We're detecting multiple transport vessels docking with the command ship. Drake's satisfaction faded, replaced by concern. Why would they consolidate prisoners now, in the middle of an attack? Sir, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from the inevitable Dominion. Text only translated from their language. On screen, Drake ordered. The message appeared on the main display, the alien language converted to English by the translation algorithms developed during the conflict. To the human command, your attack will cease immediately. All prisoners are now aboard the inevitable Dominion. Any further aggression will result in their immediate execution. Furthermore, we have activated a singularity device capable of creating a localized collapse of space-time. If our terms are not met, we will deploy this weapon in proximity to your planet with catastrophic consequences for both our forces. Our terms are simple: safe passage for our remaining vessels to rendezvous with our approaching reinforcements. In exchange, your prisoners will be returned once we reach a safe distance. You have 10 of your minutes to respond. Fleet, Commander Drex, Kra'Vek Empire. Silence fell over the command center as the implications of the message sank in. Could they really have a singularity weapon? General Thomas asked, breaking the silence. Dr. Werner stepped forward. Our intelligence on Kra'Vek technology suggests they have been experimenting with artificial gravity manipulation on a scale that could, theoretically, create a localized singularity. If deployed near Earth, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone present understood the potential devastation. A black hole, even a small temporary one, could cause unprecedented destruction if positioned correctly. And the prisoners? Drake asked, turning to the intelligence officer. Scans confirm approximately 3,000 human life signs aboard the inevitable Dominion, the officer reported grimly. Concentrated in what appear to be cargo holds near the central section of the vessel. Drake faced an even more impossible decision than before. The operation had been proceeding perfectly, on track to eliminate the remaining Kra'Vek threat. Now they were presented with an ultimatum that threatened both the lives of thousands of captives and potentially the entire planet. Options, he asked the assembled command staff. We can't trust them to honor any agreement, General Yamato said immediately. The moment they reach their reinforcements, they'll resume their attack with greater numbers. But can we risk calling what might be a bluff? Colonel Ivanova countered. If they do have this singularity device and deploy it near Earth, what about a targeted QDV strike? Suggested General Thomas. Could we pinpoint the singularity device and disable it without risking the prisoners? Dr. Werner shook her head. Without knowing its exact location and configuration, the risk of triggering the device prematurely would be extremely high. Drake studied the tactical display, mind racing through scenarios. The Kra'Vek were cornered, desperate exactly the conditions that led to the most dangerous decisions. Whether their threat was a bluff or not, they had effectively changed the dynamics of the battle in an instant. We need a third option, he said finally. Something they won't expect. He turned to Dr. Werner. The remaining QDVs, could they be reconfigured for personnel transport rather than weapons delivery? Werner's eyes widened as she grasped his meaning. Theoretically, yes. The quantum tunneling mechanism doesn't inherently distinguish between types of matter, but we've never attempted to transport living organisms. The risks would be substantial. Substantial, but not certain. Correct. Our understanding of the technology suggests it should be possible, but without testing. Drake nodded grimly. Begin reconfiguration immediately. And I need our best stealth operators, prepared for zero-G combat, ready to deploy in 30 minutes. As the command center erupted into activity implementing his orders, Drake turned back to the communications officer. Send a response to the Kra'Vek. Tell them we're considering their terms and request additional time for consultation with our planetary leadership. Buying time? General Yamato asked quietly when the others had dispersed to their tasks. Exactly, Drake confirmed. We need them to believe we're seriously considering surrender while we prepare a different kind of insertion. His plan was audacious to the point of recklessness, using the untested quantum tunneling technology to transport a special operations team directly aboard the inevitable Dominion, bypassing all its defenses just as they had done with the disruption charges. The team would locate and neutralize the singularity device, then secure the human prisoners for extraction. It was a desperate gambit against an equally desperate enemy. The risks were enormous. The quantum tunneling process might prove fatal to the operators. The singularity device might be triggered during the attempt, or the Kra'Vek might execute their prisoners at the first sign of treachery. But Drake had learned one crucial lesson throughout this conflict. Conventional thinking was insufficient against an enemy like the Kra'Vek. Only by continuing to surprise them, to act in ways they couldn't anticipate, could humanity maintain its hard-won advantage. Meanwhile, aboard the inevitable Dominion, Fleet Commander Drex awaited the humans' response, the singularity device pulsing ominously in its containment field behind him. The device represented the absolute cutting edge of Kra'Vek weapons technology, a means to artificially create a temporary space-time rupture that would function as a black hole for approximately 6 minutes before collapsing. Long enough to devastate a planet's surface if deployed in low orbit. Long enough to ensure that even if the Kra'Vek lost this battle, the humans would win only a Pyrrhic victory at best. Will they agree to our terms? Vorex asked, standing at a respectful distance. It doesn't matter, Drex replied coldly. Either they submit and give us time to rendezvous with our reinforcements, or they refuse and we demonstrate the consequences of defying the Empire. Either way, this conflict enters its final phase. Trachis studied the singularity device with professional concern. Fleet Commander, I must again emphasize the unpredictable nature of this weapon. Our testing was limited to deep space deployments. Using it near a planetary gravity well could result in effects beyond our calculations. Your concerns are noted, Science Officer, Drex said dismissively. But the decision is made. The humans have somehow gained an advantage we never anticipated. This device will ensure that advantage is short-lived. On his command display, the timer counted down the minutes until the human's deadline expired. Drex watched the seconds pass, his four hands tensed in anticipation, ready to deliver either mercy or unprecedented destruction. The fate of two species now balanced on the edge of a singularity, the outcome impossible to predict, much like the chaotic forces the Kra'Vek were prepared to unleash. Quantum tunneling calibration complete, Dr. Werner announced, her voice tight with tension. QDVs modified for personnel transport. Theoretical success rate. Captain Drake nodded grimly. The unspoken 24% failure rate hung in the air, a 1 in 4 chance that the strike team would never materialize on the other side of the quantum tunnel, their atoms scattered across space-time. The volunteers understand the risks, he said quietly. Across the command center, the 12 members of the strike team were making their final preparations. Clad in advanced combat suits embedded with Prometheum-enhanced stealth technology, they represented the absolute best of Earth's Special Operations Forces, a multinational team brought together for this one nearly impossible mission. Lieutenant Commander Jackson Wells, a veteran of the British SES, and now head of the Prometheus Special Tactics Division, led the team. His weathered face showed no fear as he checked his equipment, only calm determination. The fate of 3,000 human prisoners, and potentially the entire planet, rested on his team's success. Time check, Drake called out. T-minus 7 minutes until the Kra'Vek deadline expires, Taurus's replacement reported. Drake turned to face Wells. Your mission objectives remain unchanged. Infiltrate the inevitable Dominion. Locate and neutralize the Singularity device. Secure the human prisoners if possible. The modified QDVs will create a two-way tunnel. Once your objectives are achieved, you can extract through the same route. Wells nodded once. Understood, sir. The tunnels will remain stable for approximately 12 minutes before quantum degradation begins, Dr. Werner added. After that, extraction becomes problematic. 12 minutes to save the world, Wells remarked with grim humor. Generous time frame, Doctor. Drake looked at each member of the strike team, committing their faces to memory. Humanity has survived this war through innovation and sacrifice. Whatever happens today, I want you to know that your courage will be remembered. Wells straightened to attention. Permission to deploy, sir. Granted, Drake replied. And Godspeed. The strike team moved to the deployment chamber, a hastily modified section of the command center where the 4 QDVs had been positioned. The devices, originally designed to deliver compact disruption charges, had been reconfigured to create tunnels large enough for human transport. The technology was untested, the risks astronomical, but the alternatives were worse. Strike team in position, the operations officer reported. Dr. Werner initiated the final sequence. Quantum tunneling process beginning. Establishing connection to target coordinates aboard the inevitable Dominion. On the command display, the QDVs hummed to life, generating the same invisible distortion of space-time that had delivered the devastating blow to the Annihilator. This time, however, the tunnels would transport living, breathing humans, a quantum leap beyond their original purpose. Tunnels forming. Tunnel stability at 82%, 91%, 97%. Tunnels established and holding. Wells gave a final thumbs up to Drake through the observation window, then turned to his team. Remember your training. Move fast, stay silent, complete the mission. See you on the other side. With those words, he stepped into the shimmering distortion of the quantum tunnel, his body seeming to elongate impossibly before vanishing from sight. One by one, the remaining team members followed, each disappearing into what looked like a ripple in reality itself. 12 operatives deployed. The operations officer confirmed. Tunnel stability holding at 9. Drake turned back to the main tactical display, where the inevitable Dominion floated in lunar orbit, unaware of the invisible quantum bridges that now connected it to Site Valhalla or of the deadly passengers those bridges had just delivered. "Begin the distraction," he ordered. "All forces execute Phase 2 of Operation Thunderstrike. Keep their attention focused externally." Across Earth orbit, human forces resumed their coordinated attack on the scattered Kra'Vek fleet, carefully avoiding the inevitable Dominion itself. The goal was now to occupy the aliens' attention, to make them believe the ultimatum was being ignored while giving Wells and his team the precious minutes they needed to complete their mission. "Sir," the communications officer called. "The Kra'Vek are transmitting again." On screen, Drake ordered. The message was brief and chilling. "Deadline approaching. Your forces continue hostile actions. Reconsider your position or face consequences beyond imagination. Fleet Commander Drex." Drake's jaw tightened. "No response. Let them think we're being indecisive or defiant. Every second we buy for the strike team increases their chances." On the tactical display, the timer continued its inexorable countdown. 5 minutes until the Kra'Vek deadline expired. 5 minutes that might determine the fate of humanity. The quantum tunnel deposited Commander Wells and his team in what appeared to be a maintenance accessway deep within the inevitable Dominion. The transition was unlike anything Wells had ever experienced. A momentary sensation of being everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, his consciousness stretched across impossible distances before snapping back into his body. He fought down a wave of nausea as his senses realigned. Around him, his team materialized one by one, each looking as disoriented as he felt. 12 operatives, all successfully transported. Step 1 complete. "Status check," he whispered into his comm. "Green," came the response from each team member. "All equipment functioning. All personnel combat ready." Wells activated his Prometheum-enhanced sensor suite, scanning for Kra'Vek life signs. The alien physiology gave off distinctive energy patterns that their equipment could detect through multiple bulkheads. 2 hostiles approaching from Section 9, reported Sergeant Rodriguez, the team's sensor specialist. "Routine patrol pattern." Wells signaled for silence, activating his suit's stealth function. The team faded from visible sight as the Prometheum-infused fabric bent light around them, rendering them nearly invisible even to the Kra'Vek's enhanced vision. The alien patrol passed within meters of their position, 4 armed warriors carrying energy weapons, totally unaware of the human intruders. Once they had moved beyond sensor range, Wells reactivated the call. "Rodriguez, locate the singularity device." "Parker, find our people." Both operators worked their specialized equipment, scanning through the enormous vessel's structure for their targets. "Energy signature detected, sir," Rodriguez reported after 30 seconds. "Massive quantum fluctuations 3 decks up, central section. Consistent with theoretical models of singularity technology." "And our people?" Wells pressed. Parker frowned at his scanner. Multiple human biosigns detected in the lower detention level. Approximately 3,000 individuals clustered in 4 main holding areas. Wells processed this information quickly. Their targets were separated by significant distance, making a simultaneous operation impossible with their limited numbers. "Split into 2 teams," he decided. "I'll take 5 with me to neutralize the singularity device. Parker, you take the remaining 6 and secure our people. Prepare them for extraction." "Sir," Parker objected, "the prisoners are under heavy guard. At least 20 Kra'Vek warriors per holding area." "Then move fast and hit hard," Wells replied. "Use the QDV transponders to mark extraction zones for the prisoners. Once the singularity device is neutralized, we'll signal Valhalla to expand the quantum tunnels for mass extraction." It was a risky plan, stretching the experimental technology to its limits, but they had no alternatives. The clock was ticking, both on the Kra'Vek deadline and on the stability of the quantum tunnels themselves. "Move out," Wells ordered. "Radio silence except for critical updates." Rendezvous at Tunnel Point Alpha in 10 minutes, or we all miss our ride home. The teams separated, moving through the alien vessel with practiced stealth. Wells led his group upward, navigating the labyrinthine interior of the inevitable dominion based on Rodriguez's sensor guidance. The Kra'Vek design philosophy favored biological-looking structures, corridors that resembled arteries, chambers like organs, all bathed in a reddish ambient light that cast deep shadows, perfect for stealth infiltration. They encountered 2 more patrols, freezing in their stealth suits as the alien warriors passed. 8 minutes into their mission, Rodriguez's sensor pinged softly. "We're close, sir. Next chamber ahead." Wells signaled his team to hold position while he advanced to reconnoiter. The corridor opened into a massive spherical chamber, at the center of which hovered the singularity device, a pulsing orb of impossible darkness surrounded by a complex framework of technology. Even looking at it caused a strange vertigo, as if the eye couldn't quite process what it was seeing. Around the device, at least a dozen Kra'Vek technicians worked at control stations, monitored by 4 heavily armed guards, and overseeing it all stood a commanding figure that Wells instantly recognized from intelligence briefings. Fleet Commander Drex himself, flanked by Supreme Commander Vorex and a slender female Kra'Vek that intelligence had identified as their chief science officer. Wells retreated silently to his team. Target confirmed. Heavy security, including their fleet commander. "How do we play this, sir?" asked Rodriguez. Wells considered their options. Stealth attack? Direct assault. The chamber's configuration made a covert approach to the device itself nearly impossible, but a frontal assault against superior numbers risked failure. He made his decision. "Parker, status on the prisoner team?" Parker's response came through with the faint static of distance. "In position outside first holding area. Ready to breach on your mark. Coordinate breach of all holding areas simultaneously with our assault on the singularity chamber," Wells ordered. Maximum confusion split their response forces. "Execute on my mark in 30 seconds. As his team prepared their weapons, specialized Promethium-enhanced pulse rifles designed to penetrate Kra'Vek armor, Wells activated his QDV transponder, marking their current position for potential emergency extraction. 3, 2, 1, mark! Wells and his team deactivated their stealth suits and surged into the chamber, weapons firing in a coordinated pattern that dropped 2 guards before the aliens even registered the attack. Simultaneously, alarms began blaring throughout the vessel as Parker's team breached the holding areas on the lower decks. The remaining guards returned fire, energy weapons scorching the chamber walls as Wells and his team took cover behind equipment stations. The Kra'Vek technicians scattered in panic, abandoning their posts as the battle erupted around the singularity device. "Protect the device," Drex roared, drawing his own sidearm. Wells caught a glimpse of the science officer rushing to the control console, her hands moving rapidly across the alien interface. She was activating it. The mission timer in his HUD showed they had less than 2 minutes before the Kra'Vek deadline expired. Rodriguez, Thompson suppressing fire on the guards. Wells commanded. "Miyazaki, Chen, with me, we're taking that device." The 3 operatives broke cover, firing as they moved in a coordinated assault pattern developed specifically for Kra'Vek engagements. The aliens' 4-armed physiology gave them advantages in melee combat, but properly trained humans could exploit weaknesses in their defensive positioning. Energy blasts sizzled past Wells as he ducked and rolled, closing the distance to the singularity device. Chen went down with a cry, his left leg severed by a direct hit from one of the guards. Thompson shifted fire to cover his fallen comrade, while Miyazaki deployed a promethium shield generator that created a momentary energy barrier between them and the heaviest concentration of enemy fire. Wells reached the control platform just as the science officer completed her sequence. The device's pulsation increased, the orb of darkness at its center expanding slightly as power built within its containment field. "Step away," Wells ordered, weapon trained on the alien scientist. She turned, showing no fear, only scientific curiosity as she studied the human before her. "Fascinating," she said in surprisingly good English. "You utilized quantum tunneling technology to breach our vessel. An elegant solution." "The device," Wells repeated. "Power it down." "I cannot," she replied calmly. "The singularity generation sequence is irreversible once initiated. In approximately 60 seconds, it will deploy." Wells felt cold dread settling in his stomach. "Can it be destroyed?" "That would be inadvisable," the science officer cautioned. "Disrupting the containment field at this stage would cause an immediate collapse with unpredictable consequences." Wells felt cold dread settling in his stomach. "Can it be destroyed?" "That would be inadvisable," the science officer cautioned. "Disrupting the containment field at this stage would cause an immediate collapse with unpredictable consequences." "Tracus," Drex bellowed from across the chamber, pinned down by Rodriguez's suppressive fire. "Activate the emergency deployment." The science officer, Tracus, reached for another control, but Wells was faster, slamming the butt of his rifle into her arm with enough force to hear bone crack. She hissed in pain but did not cry out. "Parker, status on the prisoners," Wells demanded into his comm. "First 2 holding area secured," came the response, punctuated by the sound of weapons fire. Heavy resistance at the others. "We need more time." Time they didn't have. Wells studied the singularity device, its pulsations increasing in frequency as it approached deployment. Without knowing exactly how it functioned, attempting to disable it risked catastrophic failure. He made another split-second decision. "Rodriguez, signal Valhalla. Tell them to expand the quantum tunnel directly around the singularity device. We're sending it back to them." "Sir?" Rodriguez questioned, momentarily confused. "If we can't disarm it, we redirect it," Wells explained. "Have Valhalla prepare for immediate quantum displacement of the device to deep space coordinates." As Rodriguez relayed the instructions, Wells heard a roar of fury. Fleet Commander Drex had broken through the suppressive fire and was charging directly toward him, all 4 arms wielding bladed weapons that gleamed in the chamber's red light. Wells raised his rifle, but Drex moved with surprising speed for his size, closing the distance before Wells could fire. The Kra'Vek commander slashed downward with 2 arms while the other 2 thrust forward in a combination attack designed to overwhelm human reflexes. But Wells hadn't survived years of special operations by having average reflexes. He dropped and rolled, the blades missing him by centimeters, then came up firing at point-blank range. His Prometheum-enhanced rounds punched through Drex's armor, staggering the massive alien. "You think you've won, human?" Drex snarled, green blood seeping from his wounds. "You understand nothing. The singularity will deploy whether I live or die. Your planet will face the Empire's vengeance regardless." "Actually," Wells replied, "we're making a slight adjustment to your deployment plans." The air around the singularity device began to shimmer as Valhalla initiated the quantum tunnel expansion, creating a displacement field large enough to engulf the entire apparatus. Drex roared in fury, lunging toward the device in a desperate attempt to stop what was happening. Wells intercepted him, tackling the much larger alien with reckless disregard for his own safety. They crashed to the deck together, Wells using his combat training to compensate for the Kra'Vek's superior strength and multiple limbs. "Rodriguez," Wells shouted as he struggled with Drex. "Status on the tunnel." "Tunnel expanding now, sir. 30 seconds to displacement capacity." The singularity device's pulsations had reached a fever pitch, the orb of darkness at its center now the size of a basketball, and growing. The containment field around it flickered with strain, holding back forces that could tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. Drex managed to get one arm free, slashing at Wells with a blade that opened a gash across his chest despite the protective suit. Wells grunted in pain but maintained his hold, knowing that if Drex reached the device, he could potentially disrupt the quantum tunnel formation. 20 seconds to displacement capability. The chamber had become a chaotic battlefield. Miyazaki and the wounded Chen held one entrance against Kra'Vek reinforcements, while Rodriguez and Thompson maintained control of the main approach. The science officer Tracus had retreated to a corner, observing the conflict with analytical detachment despite her broken arm. Vorex had disappeared during the initial assault, a concerning development, but Wells had more immediate problems. Drex had managed to work another arm free and was attempting to strangle him, powerful alien fingers closing around his throat. Wells drove a knee into what he hoped was a vulnerable area of Kra'Vek anatomy. Drex's grip loosened momentarily, enough for Wells to break free and scramble back toward the singularity device and the expanding quantum tunnel. 10 seconds. Rodriguez called. "Parker. Status on prisoners?" Wells demanded between gasps for air. 3 holding areas secured. Working on the 4th. Many wounded but mobile. The singularity device had begun to emit a high-pitched whine that set Wells's teeth on edge. The orb of darkness pulsed in time with the sound growing larger with each cycle. 5 seconds to displacement capability. Drex charged again, bellowing in rage. "You will not deny us victory." Wells stood his ground between the Kra'Vek commander and the singularity device, weapon raised. "You made one critical mistake," he said calmly. "You thought humans were weak." He fired 3 perfectly placed shots that punched through Drex's chest armor and into the vital organs beneath. The Kra'Vek commander staggered, green blood flowing freely now, but incredibly he kept coming. "Displacement field ready," Rodriguez announced. "Execute," Wells ordered, diving clear of the singularity device. The quantum tunnel fully formed around the alien weapon, the air shimmering as space-time itself folded inward. For a brief moment, Wells could see through the tunnel, a glimpse of what looked like deep space far from any celestial body, the designated coordinates where the singularity could deploy harmlessly. With a sound like reality tearing, the device vanished from the chamber. Quantum displaced to its new location. The sudden absence left a momentary vacuum that caused ears to pop and equipment to rattle. Drex collapsed to his knees, staring at the empty space where his superweapon had been. "Impossible," he whispered, blood bubbling from his mouth. "That word has lost a lot of meaning lately," Wells replied, retrieving his weapon and training it on the dying alien commander. "Parker, status? All holding areas secured, sir. Prisoners being prepared for extraction. But we have a problem. Several Kra'Vek transports are attempting to launch from the lower hangars. If they escape, they'll warn the reinforcements," Wells finished grimly. He checked his mission timer. 7 minutes until the quantum tunnels began to degrade. Not enough time to both secure the engine room and extract all prisoners. Another impossible choice in a war full of them. Inside Valhalla's command center, Drake watched the events unfold through the limited data feed from the strike team's equipment. The quantum displacement of the singularity device had been confirmed. The alien superweapon now floating harmlessly in deep space where it could deploy without threatening Earth or any inhabited system. Strike team reports all prisoner holding areas secured, the communications officer announced, requesting immediate expansion of quantum tunnels for mass extraction. "Granted," Drake ordered. "Reconfigure all available tunnels for maximum throughput." Dr. Werner and her team worked frantically at their consoles, pushing the experimental technology beyond its designed parameters. Tunnels expanding to maximum diameter. "We can extract approximately 50 individuals per minute per tunnel." Drake did the math quickly. 3,000 prisoners across 4 tunnels, 15 minutes minimum for complete extraction. But the tunnels would begin degrading in 7 minutes. "Not enough time," he muttered. Then, louder, "Prepare Prometheus Squadron for immediate launch. Target, inevitable Dominion. Mission, secure vessel for conventional extraction of remaining prisoners." It was a desperate gambit, sending their interceptors against the Kra'Vek flagship directly. But they needed more time than the quantum tunnels could provide. As the orders went out, the tactical display updated with new information that froze Drake's blood. "Sir," the sensor officer reported, voice tight with alarm, were detecting activity from the previously inactive Kra'Vek vessels, energy signatures returning to combat levels. Their quantum network appears to be partially restored. The display confirmed the officer's report. Across lunar orbit, Kra'Vek ships that had been damaged or dormant were powering up, their systems coming back online in a coordinated pattern that suggested central control had been re-established. How? Drake demanded. We destroyed their command infrastructure. Unknown, sir, but energy patterns suggest a secondary quantum network operating on different frequencies than the one we disrupted. A new alert sounded. This one even more urgent. Massive deceleration signatures detected at the edge of the solar system. The sensor officer continued. The Kra'Vek reinforcements have arrived ahead of schedule. Estimated time to Earth orbit, 3 hours. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Their victory had been illusory, a momentary advantage that the adaptable aliens had already begun to counter. The quantum tunneling technology that had given them their edge was now stretched to its limits, extracting prisoners, unable to be repurposed for another surprise attack. And a new armada, presumably warned about human capabilities and prepared with countermeasures, was approaching rapidly. Sir, the communications officer called. Commander Wells is reporting that Supreme Commander Vorex is missing from the Singularity Chamber, and multiple Kra'Vek transports are attempting to launch from the inevitable Dominion. Drake understood immediately. Vorex had activated the backup network, preparing for this very contingency. The Kra'Vek had learned from their defeat and adapted accordingly. The tactical display updated again as the first human prisoners began emerging from the quantum tunnels. Many wounded but alive. A small victory amidst the looming threat of renewed alien assault. Options? Drake asked, turning to his command staff. General Yamato stepped forward. The Prometheus squadron can still intercept those transports before they rendezvous with the reinforcements. If we prevent Vorex from sharing intelligence about our capabilities, we might maintain our advantage of surprise, Drake finished. Order the launch immediately. As the commands went out, Drake studied the tactical display showing the approaching Kra'Vek reinforcements, a force even larger than the one they'd faced initially, and somewhere aboard the inevitable Dominion, Commander Wells would be making the impossible decision between completing the prisoner extraction and preventing Vorex's escape. The battle that had seemed won minutes ago now hung in the balance once more. Everything would depend on whether Wells could capture Vorex and prevent the intelligence transfer, whether the Prometheus squadron could intercept the escaping transports, and whether Earth's forces could prepare yet another unexpected strategy before the reinforcements arrived. The war had reached its tipping point, the moment that would determine the fate of humanity. Commander Wells sprinted through the corridors of the inevitable Dominion, Rodriguez and Miyazaki at his heels. Behind them, the quantum tunnels were extracting prisoners as quickly as possible, supervised by Parker and the rest of the team. But the mission had acquired a new critical objective: prevent Supreme Commander Vorex from escaping with intelligence about human capabilities. Engine levels ahead, Rodriguez reported, checking his scanner. Multiple Kra'Vek life signs. One matches Vorex's biopattern. They rounded a corner and encountered a squad of Kra'Vek warriors guarding an access corridor. Without breaking stride, Wells and his team opened fire, their Prometheum-enhanced weapons cutting through the aliens' armor. 2 went down immediately, but the others returned fire, forcing the humans to take cover. Time check, Wells demanded, as energy blasts scorched the bulkhead inches from his head. 5 minutes until tunnel degradation begins, Miyazaki reported. Parker says approximately 600 prisoners extracted so far. Not enough. Not nearly enough. And if Vorex escaped, Wells made yet another impossible decision. Rodriguez returned to the prisoner extraction. Tell Parker to prioritize military personnel and scientific assets. Anyone who might have intelligence value to the Kra'Vek. Sir, Rodriguez questioned. That's an order. Miyazaki and I will handle Vorex. Rodriguez hesitated only briefly before nodding. Yes, sir. Good hunting. As Rodriguez retreated, Wells turned to Miyazaki. Ready to end this? The Japanese Special Forces operative nodded once, a slight smile crossing her face. For Patterson, Torres, and Holden. For all of them, Wells agreed. They broke cover simultaneously, firing in a coordinated pattern that caught the remaining Kra'Vek guards in a deadly crossfire. Within seconds, the corridor was clear, the way to the engine section open. They moved forward cautiously, sensors indicating they were close to their target. The corridor opened into a massive chamber dominated by what appeared to be the ship's quantum drive, a pulsing crystalline structure that twisted in ways that hurt the human eye to follow. Standing at a control console was Supreme Commander Vorex, working quickly to interface with a transport vessel docked at a maintenance airlock. Surrounding him were 6 elite Kra'Vek guards, their armor more elaborate than the standard warriors. Vorex looked up as Wells and Miyazaki entered, his alien features showing something akin to resignation. "Humans," he said, his translated voice surprisingly calm. "You continue to surprise us." "Step away from the console," Wells ordered, weapon trained on the Kra'Vek commander. "It's over." "Is it?" Vorex questioned. "Our reinforcements approach. Your quantum tunnels will collapse soon, leaving hundreds of your people trapped aboard. And while you have indeed executed a brilliant counterattack, you lack the numbers to withstand what comes next." "We've heard that before," Miyazaki replied coolly. "Hasn't worked out well for you so far?" Vorex made a sound that might have been laughter. "Indeed. We have underestimated you repeatedly. A mistake I do not intend to propagate by allowing myself to be captured." His hand moved toward a control on his armor. "Don't," Wells warned. "You would prefer I surrender, share my knowledge of your capabilities with your interrogators?" Vorex asked. "No, Commander. I think not." The Kra'Vek guards moved with preternatural coordination, placing themselves between Vorex and the humans. The Supreme Commander continued. "I offer you a choice, humans. Attempt to capture me, knowing that even if you succeed, hundreds of your people will remain trapped aboard when your tunnels collapse, or return to your extraction, save as many as you can, and allow me to depart." Wells's mind raced through the possibilities. Could they overcome 6 elite guards and capture Vorex in time to return to the extraction? Unlikely. But allowing him to escape with intelligence about human capabilities could doom the entire planet when the reinforcements arrive. As if reading his thoughts, Vorex added, "Consider this as well. I have already transmitted much of what I know to our approaching fleet. Capturing me gains you little tactical advantage at great cost." Was he bluffing? Wells couldn't tell. Alien psychology remained difficult to read even after weeks of conflict. "Sir," Miyazaki said quietly, 3 minutes to tunnel degradation. 3 minutes to decide the fate of hundreds of prisoners and potentially billions of humans if Vorex escaped with critical intelligence. Wells made his choice. "Both," Wells said quietly. "Sir?" Miyazaki questioned, not understanding. "We're taking both options." He tapped his comm. "Parker, initiate emergency extraction protocols. Priority 1, get our people out. Use every second of tunnel stability." "And Vorex?" Miyazaki asked, her weapon still trained on the alien commander. Wells's eyes never left the Supreme Commander as he activated his QDV transponder's emergency function. "We're bringing the mountain to Muhammad." Understanding dawned on Miyazaki's face as Wells transmitted the new coordinates to Valhalla. Instead of trying to capture Vorex and drag him back to the extraction point, they would bring the extraction point to him. 60 seconds. Wells transmitted to Dr. Werner at Site Valhalla. "Redirect Tunnel 4 to these coordinates. Maximum aperture." Vorex's facial tentacles twitched in what might have been confusion. "Your tunnels are degrading. You cannot maintain extraction operations and pursue me simultaneously." "Watch us," Wells replied, a grim smile appearing on his face. The air behind them began to shimmer as the redirection of Quantum Tunnel 4 took effect, space-time bending as the wormhole established its new endpoint directly in the engine room. The 6 Kra'Vek guards reacted immediately. raising their weapons to fire. Wells and Miyazaki were faster, their specialized training and Prometheum-enhanced reflexes giving them the critical edge. 3 guards went down before they could fire, precise shots penetrating their armor at the weak points human intelligence had identified. The remaining guards returned fire, forcing the 2 operatives to dive for cover behind a massive power conduit. Energy blasts superheated the air around them, the confined space amplifying the danger of each shot. 30 seconds to tunnel collapse, Miyazaki reported, checking her tactical display. Vorax had abandoned the console and was moving toward the docked transport vessel, his guards providing covering fire to facilitate his escape. If he reached the ship, he would be beyond their reach. "Cover me," Wells ordered, then sprinted from their position before Miyazaki could object. He charged directly toward the Kra'Vek guards, firing as he ran. 1 alien went down, but the other 2 adjusted their aim, tracking his movement with deadly precision. Energy blasts sizzled past him, one grazing his shoulder with enough force to spin him halfway around. Wells used the momentum, turning it into a roll that brought him up inside the guard's optimal firing arc. Too close for their rifles, forcing them to switch to melee weapons. 4 armed warriors against a wounded human. Normally a death sentence, but Wells wasn't a normal human. As the first guard slashed downward with a vibroblade, Wells activated the final feature of his combat suit, a Prometheum-enhanced exoskeleton that briefly amplified his strength and speed to superhuman levels. He caught the descending blade between his palms, the suit's reinforced gauntlets absorbing the impact, then twisted with augmented strength, snapping the blade and driving the broken half into the guard's throat. The second guard attacked from his flank, all 4 arms wielding different weapons in a combination designed to overwhelm any defense. Wells dropped and swept the alien's legs, the exoskeleton giving him enough power to topple the much larger Kra'Vek. As the guard fell, Wells drove a reinforced fist into its chest plate with bone-crushing force. 15 seconds. Miyazaki called, providing suppressing fire to keep Vorax pinned down near the transport's airlock. Wells sprinted toward the Supreme Commander, his exoskeleton whining with the strain of maximum output. Vorax turned, raising some kind of personal weapon, but Wells was already inside his guard. He tackled the alien commander with enough force to send them both crashing into the airlock door. "Tunnel stability critical," Miyazaki warned. 10 seconds to collapse. Behind him, the quantum tunnel pulsed erratically, its perfect circle beginning to waver as the experimental technology reached its operational limits. Through the tunnel's aperture, Wells caught glimpses of Site Valhalla, of the organized chaos as extracted prisoners were processed and medical teams tended to the injured. 5 seconds. With a final surge of exoskeletal strength, Wells lifted the struggling Vorax and bodily threw him through the tunnel, following immediately after with a desperate dive. Miyazaki was right behind him, firing back at the remaining Kra'Vek forces as she leapt into the collapsing wormhole. The transition was rougher this time, the degrading tunnel causing sensations that threatened to tear apart Wells's consciousness. For an eternal moment he existed in multiple states simultaneously, his atoms stretched across impossible distances. Then reality reasserted itself with brutal finality, as he crashed onto the floor of Site Valhalla's deployment chamber. Vorax landed beside him, momentarily stunned by the quantum transition. Miyazaki arrived a split second later, rolling to a combat stance with her weapon still trained on the alien commander. The tunnel collapsed behind them with a sound like thunder, the experimental technology finally exceeding its operational parameters. Throughout the chamber, alarms blared as systems overloaded and shut down. Wells struggled to his feet, exoskeleton sparking and failing after the extreme stress it had endured. His body felt like one massive bruise, the quantum transition having taxed his physiology to its limits. But they had succeeded. Vorax was captured, denied the opportunity to escape with his crucial intelligence. Supreme Commander secured, he reported into his comm, as security personnel surrounded the alien leader with weapons drawn. Status on prisoner extraction. 2,417 extracted before final tunnel collapse, came Drake's reply. The rest, we couldn't get them all out in time. Wells closed his eyes briefly. Nearly 600 humans remained trapped aboard the inevitable Dominion. Another cost in a war that had already claimed millions of lives. But there was no time for regret. Not yet. Not with Kra'Vek reinforcements approaching and Earth's defenses still reeling from the previous battle. Commander Wells, Drake continued. Report to command immediately. Prometheus Squadron has engaged the escaping Kra'Vek transports, and we have a situation with the approaching reinforcements. Understood, Wells acknowledged, casting one final look at the captured Vorex as security personnel led the alien away. The Supreme Commander may have vital intelligence. My thoughts exactly, Drake replied. And we'll need every advantage we can get for what comes next. Aboard the inevitable Dominion, the remaining humans huddled in the secured holding areas, abandoned by their would-be rescuers as the quantum tunnels collapsed. Among them was Air Force Colonel James Marshall, the highest-ranking officer among those left behind. "What now, sir?" asked a young soldier, fear evident in his voice despite his attempt to mask it. Marshall surveyed the assembled survivors. 96 humans, according to their last count, a mix of military personnel and civilians who hadn't made it through the tunnels before they collapsed. They had limited weapons scavenged from the Special Forces team's equipment caches, minimal food, and no way to communicate with Earth. And the ship was crawling with very angry Kra'Vek warriors searching for them. Now, Marshall said with forced confidence, we do what humans do best. We adapt. He gestured to the small group of engineers and technical specialists who had been examining the alien technology in their section. Ramirez, what have you found? Lieutenant Maria Ramirez, a communications specialist with a background in alien technology analysis, stepped forward. The Kra'Vek systems are complex but not incomprehensible, sir. We've identified what we believe are transport controls and communications arrays. With time, we might be able to access them. Time is something we don't have much of, Marshall replied grimly. Those reinforcements will be here soon, and when they arrive, this ship will likely rejoin the battle. Unless it can't, offered Dr. William Chen, a civilian scientist who had been studying the Kra'Vek propulsion systems before his capture. Their quantum drive was damaged during the attack. I observed significant fluctuations in the containment field before we were forced back here. Marshall considered this information. Are you suggesting sabotage? Chen nodded. If we could reach the engine room, we might be able to disable the drive completely. Strand this ship here while the rest of their fleet moves to engage Earth. It was a desperate plan with minimal chance of success. Exactly the kind of operation that had characterized the entire conflict. Marshall made his decision. Ramirez, assemble a team. Focus on accessing their communication systems. If we can warn Earth about the reinforcements' capabilities, we might give them a fighting chance. And the engines, sir? Chen asked. Marshall smiled grimly. That'll be my job. I need volunteers with combat experience and a healthy disregard for impossible odds. Hands raised throughout the holding area. Humans of all backgrounds, military and civilian alike, united by their determination to contribute to humanity's defense, even from their position of captivity. Let's get to work, Marshall ordered. We may be trapped here, but we're not helpless. And we're damn sure not defeated. The impromptu resistance organized quickly, dividing into specialized teams with clear objectives. As they prepared to venture out into the hostile vessel, Marshall found himself thinking of the countless historical examples of prisoners who had transformed their captivity into unexpected opportunities. The Kra'Vek had locked nearly 600 humans aboard their flagship. They were about to discover why that might have been their final mistake. Inside Valhalla's command center, Captain Marcus Drake listened intently as Commander Wells delivered his report on the mission aboard the inevitable Dominion. Around them, the command staff worked with renewed purpose, preparing Earth's defenses for the approaching Kra'Vek reinforcement. So we have Vorex, but lost nearly 600 people. Drake summarized, his expression grim. and the remaining Kra'Vek vessels are restoring their quantum network on alternative frequencies. Yes, sir, Wells confirmed. But we've disrupted their command structure significantly. Fleet Commander Drex is dead, and without Vorex, they'll be operating with degraded strategic coordination. Drake nodded, turning to the tactical display where the approaching reinforcements appeared as an ominous cluster of red indicators. What's the status of Prometheus Squadron's engagement with the escaping transports? 12 transports attempted to launch, reported General Yamato. 8 have been destroyed, 3 disabled and captured. 1 escaped our intercept and is on course to rendezvous with the reinforcements. So, they'll have some intelligence about our capabilities, Drake concluded. Not complete, but enough to be cautious. Sir, Dr. Werner interrupted, approaching with a data pad. The interrogation of Supreme Commander Vorex has yielded significant information. The reinforcement fleet consists of 2 primary Dominion-class vessels and approximately 1,500 support craft. Drake absorbed this information with a calm that belied the gravity of the situation. Even with their recent victories, Earth's forces were in no condition to repel an attack of that magnitude. The Aegis arrays and Helios network had been partially restored, but their effectiveness against an enemy now aware of their existence would be significantly reduced. What about the QDVs, he asked. Can we produce more in time? Dr. Werner shook her head. The equipment was severely damaged during the final extraction. We can repair it, but not before the reinforcements arrive. We have 3 operational devices remaining, but without the quantum tunneling capacity that made them so effective. Drake turned to the assembled command staff. Options? Sir, a communications officer called. We're receiving a transmission from the inevitable Dominion. It's from Colonel Marshall. Drake's head snapped up. Put it through. The transmission was fragmented, distorted by the aliens' attempts to jam it, but Marshall's voice came through clearly enough. Captured communications array, intelligence on reinforcements, attempting engine sabotage. Need coordination. Boost the signal, Drake ordered. Colonel Marshall, this is Captain Drake. Report status. Marshall's voice strengthened as the signal was enhanced. Captain, we've established a resistance cell aboard the inevitable Dominion. Dr. Chen has analyzed their quantum drive system and believes we can disable it permanently. More importantly, we've accessed their tactical databases. The reinforcements are not prepared for your quantum weapons. They know something happened, but not exactly what or how. A surge of hope went through the command center. The prisoners hadn't surrendered. They had organized and were now providing critical intelligence from behind enemy lines. Can you transmit the technical data on their reinforcements? Drake asked. Already packaging it now. Marshall confirmed. But we don't have much time. The Kra'Vek are hunting us through the ship. We've established defensive positions, but it's only a matter of time before they overwhelm us. Drake thought quickly. Colonel, what's the status of the inevitable Dominion's weapons systems? Partially operational according to our analysis of their control interfaces. Why? Because, Drake said, a plan forming in his mind, I'm going to give you the opportunity to strike the decisive blow in this war. He outlined his strategy rapidly. A daring, possibly insane plan that would require perfect coordination between Earth's forces and the human resistance aboard the alien flagship. As he spoke, the command staff began implementing the necessary preparations, hope returning to faces that had been grim with the certainty of defeat moments before. It's a one-way mission, Colonel, Drake concluded honestly. You understand that? Marshall's reply came without hesitation. We understood that the moment the tunnels collapsed, Captain, better to go out taking as many of them with us as possible. Then Godspeed, Colonel. Transmit when you're in position. As the communication ended, Drake turned to face the expectant command staff. You heard the plan. We have approximately 2 hours before the reinforcements enter weapons range. I need every available asset prepared for coordinated deployment on my mark. The command center erupted into focused activity as Drake's orders were relayed throughout Earth's defensive network. It was humanity's darkest hour, with defeat seemingly inevitable against the overwhelming alien reinforcements. But as had happened repeatedly throughout the conflict, impossible circumstances had inspired an equally impossible response. The final battle for Earth was about to begin. The Kra'Vek reinforcement fleet approached Earth orbit with supreme confidence, despite the disturbing reports they had received from the single transport that had escaped the human counterattack. High Marshal Kra'Vek, commander of the largest invasion force ever assembled by the Empire, dismissed the concerns his subordinates raised about the humans' unexpected capabilities. "We have studied the transmissions," he told his assembled commanders aboard the massive flagship Absolute Conquest. Yes, the humans deployed some form of quantum weapon that disrupted our advanced forces networks, but they did so through deception and surprise, advantages they no longer possess. We are prepared for their tricks now. He gestured to the tactical display showing Earth floating serenely against the blackness of space. Their defenses are in disarray. Their leadership fragmented. Their supposed superweapon appears to have been depleted in their initial attack. Victory is inevitable. None of the gathered commanders dared contradict him, though several exchanged concerned glances. The initial invasion force had been similarly confident, only to suffer unprecedented losses at the hands of these supposedly primitive beings. The inevitable Dominion remains operational despite damage to its quantum systems, Kra'Vek continued. Supreme Commander Vorex has been captured, but Fleet Commander Drex died honorably in battle. We will avenge our fallen and complete the conquest as the High Council commands. He turned to his tactical officer. Signal all vessels to assume attack formation. Primary targets remain as designated: their defensive arrays, command centers, and any vessels capable of space combat. Once these are eliminated, we will begin planetary pacification. As the massive fleet arranged itself for the final approach to Earth, long-range sensors detected unusual activity ahead. "High Marshal," reported the sensor officer, "the human defenses appear to be retreating." Kra'Vek moved to the sensor display, watching as the scattered human vessels pulled back from their defensive positions around the planet, consolidating into a single formation near their moon. "They recognize the futility of resistance," he said dismissively. "Perhaps they intend to offer surrender terms." "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the inevitable Dominion. Audio only." "Put it through," Kra'Vek ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was not Kra'Vek but human, speaking in heavily accented but intelligible Kra'Vek language. "Attention Kra'Vek Reinforcement Fleet. This is Colonel James Marshall of Earth Defense Forces. We have seized control of the inevitable Dominion and offer you this one opportunity to withdraw from our system. Failure to comply will result in your destruction." Stunned silence fell over the command deck, followed by something close to laughter from several officers. Kra'Vek himself made the barking sound that served as Kra'Vek amusement. "The arrogance of these creatures is remarkable," he commented. "They capture one damaged vessel and believe they can threaten an armada." He signaled his communications officer. "Respond as follows: your species' defiance, while notable, has reached its end. Surrender the inevitable Dominion immediately, and we may consider sparing your major population centers during our conquest." The human response came quickly. "We suspected you might say that. Very well. Remember, you were warned." Kra'Vek dismissed the exchange with a gesture, returning his attention to the tactical display. "Continue approach. All vessels prepare for combat deployment." "Sir," the sensor officer called with sudden urgency, "the inevitable Dominion is powering its main quantum drive, but the signatures are highly unstable. The containment field appears to be deliberately failing." Kra'Vek's amusement vanished instantly. "What? Order them to shut down immediately." "They're not responding to commands," the communications officer reported. "And they're accelerating directly toward our formation." On the tactical display, the damaged Kra'Vek flagship had indeed begun moving, its engines burning far beyond safety parameters, as it drove straight toward the heart of the reinforcement fleet, toward the Absolute Conquest itself. "Evasive maneuvers," Kra'Vek ordered. "All vessels break formation." But the massive fleet, arrayed in tight attack formation, could not disperse quickly enough. The inevitable Dominion, its quantum drive containment field now visibly failing as energy cascaded across its hull, plunged into the center of the Kra'Vek Armada. "Brace for impact," someone shouted, but there was no impact. Instead, at the precise moment the inevitable Dominion reached the center of the fleet formation, its quantum drive catastrophically failed, not in a conventional explosion, but in a collapse of space-time itself as the uncontained quantum energies created a temporary but massive gravitational singularity. Ships closest to the inevitable Dominion were torn apart instantly, pulled into the growing singularity that consumed matter and energy alike. The absolute conquest, despite its immense size and power, found itself caught in the gravitational maelstrom, its hull groaning as tidal forces began to tear it apart. "Pull, reverse thrust," Kra'Vek's ordered desperately. "Divert all power to engines." But escape was impossible. The artificial singularity continued to expand, drawing in ship after ship from the once mighty invasion fleet. On the failing sensors of the absolute conquest, Kra'Vek's caught a final glimpse of what waited beyond the growing event horizon. The human vessels, positioned safely beyond the singularity's reach, launching what appeared to be their remaining quantum weapons directly into the chaotic heart of the collapsing fleet. The last thought to cross High Marshal Kra'Vek's mind before the absolute conquest disintegrated was an emotion rare among the Kra'Vek warrior caste: respect. These humans had not just defeated them. They had outmaneuvered, outfought, and outthought the greatest military force in the known galaxy. They had turned the Kra'Vek's own technology against them in the most devastating way possible. They had earned their place among the stars. The artificial singularity collapsed after 17 minutes, leaving behind nothing but scattered debris where the pride of the Kra'Vek Empire had once been. Of the 1,500 vessels that had comprised the reinforcement fleet, not one remained intact. The handful that had been far enough from the center to escape the gravitational pull had been systematically destroyed by the combined firepower of Earth's defensive arrays, now operating at full capacity with the precision targeting provided by Colonel Marshall's final transmission. Inside Valhalla's command center, the celebration was tempered by the knowledge of what victory had cost. The inevitable Dominion and all aboard, including Colonel Marshall and his 59 fellow humans, had been lost in the singularity's creation. Countless others had died throughout the weeks of conflict, both military personnel and civilians caught in the Kra'Vek assault. But Earth had survived. Humanity had prevailed against an enemy that had conquered hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. Captain Marcus Drake stood before the assembled leaders of Earth's unified defense force, the weight of command finally lifting from his shoulders as the immediate threat passed. "The Kra'Vek reinforcements have been destroyed," he confirmed. "Our long-range sensors detect no additional forces approaching the solar system. For the moment, at least, the invasion has been repelled." The assembled officers and officials erupted in applause and cheers, the tension of weeks of desperate resistance finally finding release. Drake allowed the celebration to continue for a moment before raising his hand for quiet. "Our victory came at tremendous cost," he continued soberly. "Millions of lives lost, cities destroyed, and the sacrifice of the 59 brave souls aboard the inevitable Dominion who turned their captivity into humanity's salvation." He paused, allowing a moment of silence for the fallen. "But we have not only survived, we have secured knowledge and technology that will transform our civilization. The Prometheum applications developed during this conflict have only begun to reveal their potential. The quantum tunneling technology, despite its current limitations, represents a fundamental breakthrough in our understanding of physics." He gestured to where Supreme Commander Vorex waited under guard, the alien leader displaying remarkable dignity despite his captivity. "And we have gained insight into a much larger galactic community than we ever imagined existed." Drake approached Vorex, standing face to face with the being who had been their most dangerous enemy. "Supreme Commander, your empire came to our world expecting easy conquest. You discovered instead that humans are not to be underestimated. What message will you carry back to your people when we eventually allow your return?" Vorex regarded Drake with an unreadable alien expression. When he spoke, his words were translated for all to hear. That the Kra'Vek Empire has encountered a species unlike any in our records, he said carefully. One that does not merely fight with technology or numbers, but with an adaptability and resolve that defies conventional assessment. I will tell them that humans are not to be conquered, but perhaps eventually to be allied with. Murmurs ran through the assembled leaders at this unexpected response. Allied? Drake questioned. After what your people attempted here, the Empire has existed for 12,000 of your years, Vorex explained. In that time we have encountered many species, conquered many worlds, but never have we faced a defeat such as this, not merely military but conceptual. You forced us to reconsider assumptions fundamental to our understanding of inferior species. He straightened to his full height, facial tentacles moving in what humans now recognized as a gesture of formal respect. The High Council will not soon forget this defeat. They will likely wish to avenge it, but wiser voices, including mine, should I be permitted to return, will counsel a different approach. Humanity has proven itself worthy of recognition in the galactic order. Drake considered these words carefully. And this galactic order, what can you tell us about it? That it is vast, complex, and often dangerous, Vorex replied. The Kra'Vek Empire is but one of several major powers competing for resources and influence across thousands of star systems. Some are more aggressive than others. Some would view your species with the same dismissive arrogance we initially displayed. Others might see potential allies or resources to be exploited. He paused, then added with what might have been the Kra'Vek equivalent of a smile, but all of them, I suspect, will soon learn of the species that defeated the undefeatable Empire, and they will watch your development with great interest. The implications were clear. Humanity's victory had announced their presence on the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible. They had earned respect, but also potentially unwanted attention from powers beyond their current understanding. Then we had better continue preparing, Drake said, turning back to the assembled leaders. This victory doesn't mark the end of our challenges, only the beginning of a new chapter in human history, one where we take our place among the stars not as conquerors or the conquered, but as equals. The gathering dispersed gradually, leaders returning to the monumental task of rebuilding a world damaged by war, while simultaneously preparing for the new reality Vorex had described. Drake remained behind, studying the tactical display that now showed peaceful Earth orbit, cleared of alien vessels for the first time in weeks. General Yamato approached, offering a rare smile. The President wants to give you a medal. Several, actually. Drake shook his head. The medals belong to Patterson, Torres, Holden, Taylor, Marshall, and all the others who gave everything. I just gave orders. You gave humanity hope when it seemed lost, Yamato countered. That's worth recognizing. Before Drake could respond, Dr. Werner hurried into the command center, excitement evident in her normally composed features. Captain, we've completed our preliminary analysis of the Kra'Vek quantum drive technology recovered from the captured transports. And, Drake prompted. It's revolutionary, sir. With the Prometheum applications we've already developed, we could potentially adapt their drive principles to create a human version within 5 years, maybe less. Interstellar travel, Captain. Not just to nearby stars, but potentially throughout the galaxy. Drake absorbed this information, its implications rippling outward in his mind. Humanity had not only survived its first contact with an alien civilization, it had acquired the means to join them among the stars. There's something else, Werner added, her voice dropping. In Supreme Commander Vorex's personal data storage, we found references to something called the Ascension Protocol. It appears to be some kind of biological experimentation program running for centuries across multiple conquered worlds. Experimentation for what purpose? Drake asked. It's not entirely clear from the fragments we've translated, Werner admitted. But it seems related to the pursuit of some form of evolution or transcendence. And more concerning, there are mentions of suitable candidates among human genetic patterns. A chill ran down Drake's spine. The war might be over, but the mysteries and potential threats it had revealed were just beginning to unfold. Continue the analysis, he ordered. Priority level Alpha, and accelerate the Prometheus fleet expansion program. If there are more threats out there, we need to be ready. As Werner departed, Drake turned back to the view of Earth. Beautiful, resilient, and now irrevocably changed by its encounter with the wider galaxy. Humanity had discovered its strength in the crucible of an impossible war, revealing capabilities and determination that had shocked even themselves. They had been tested and had emerged stronger. But Drake knew the true test was still to come. How would humanity use its newfound power and knowledge? Would they repeat the mistakes of the Kra'Vek, expanding through arrogance and conquest, or would they forge a different path among the stars? The answer to that question would define not just Earth's future, but potentially the future of the galaxy itself. 6 months after what had become known as the Kra'Vek War, life on Earth had achieved a new normal. Cities were being rebuilt. The Unified Defense Force had evolved into the Terran Space Command, with Drake as its first admiral, and humanity looked to the stars with new understanding of both the dangers and opportunities they represented. In a quiet memorial garden established near the ruins of Cheyenne Mountain, Drake stood before the Monument of Sacrifice, a towering obelisk of promethium-infused stone that seemed to shimmer with inner light. Engraved upon it were the names of those who had given their lives to secure humanity's survival, with pride of place given to the crews of the special operations missions that had turned the tide of the war. Patterson, Torres, Holden, Taylor, Marshall, and so many others. Drake placed his hand against the cool stone, feeling the faint resonance of the promethium within it. The artificial element that had changed everything continued to reveal new properties and applications, accelerating human technological development beyond anything previously imagined. "I thought I might find you here," said a familiar voice. Drake turned to see Lieutenant Commander Wells approaching along the garden path. The Special Forces officer still moved with a slight limp from his injuries during the mission aboard the Inevitable Dominion, but had otherwise recovered remarkably. "Old habits," Drake admitted. "I come here to think." "About them?" Wells asked, nodding toward the monument. "About them? About what they died for? About what comes next?" Wells stood beside him, studying the names etched in the stone. "The first Prometheus long-range vessel launches next week. They're naming it the Patterson." Drake nodded. "A fitting tribute. The first human ship designed to explore beyond our solar system. Are you nervous?" Wells asked. "About what we might find out there?" Drake considered the question. "Cautious," he finally said. "Vorex's information about the galactic political landscape suggests we'll need to proceed carefully. But not afraid. Not anymore." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, remembering those whose sacrifice had made this new era possible. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you," Wells said eventually. "That day in the command center, when everything seemed lost, the Annihilator bearing down on us, our defenses failing, did you really believe we could win? Or were you just refusing to accept defeat?" Drake smiled slightly. "Both, I think. Humans have a unique capacity that the Kra'Vek never understood. We can recognize the overwhelming odds against us, but choose to fight anyway. We can acknowledge the rational impossibility of victory, but still refuse to surrender." He turned to face Wells directly. "That's what Vorex meant when he said we forced them to reconsider their fundamental assumptions. They judged us by our technology, our numbers, our apparent capabilities. But they failed to account for our defining characteristic, which is," Wells prompted, "that when faced with the impossible, humans don't accept it. We change the parameters of the possible itself." Drake gestured toward the stars, now visible in the darkening sky above them. "And that's what truly terrified them. Not our weapons or our tactics, but the realization that they had encountered a species that refuses to accept limitations, even those that seem written into the fabric of reality itself." Wells nodded thoughtfully. "So, What happens when the Patterson makes contact with other civilizations out there? When humanity truly joins the galactic community, Vorex described. That, Drake said, will be the true test of our species. We've proven we can fight when necessary. Now we need to prove we can build, explore, and coexist as well. As twilight deepened around them, the first stars appeared in the sky. No longer distant, unreachable points of light, but potential destinations in humanity's newfound future. Somewhere among them waited other civilizations, other challenges, other opportunities. And humanity, tempered by fire, strengthened by sacrifice, and unified by shared purpose, prepared to meet them. Not as the weak, primitive species the Kra'Vek had mistakenly judged them to be, but as equals, as innovators, as survivors. As humans,